Hi everyone. What is Power BI? Power BI is a Microsoft tool, but it is not a part of Microsoft Office. While it is free of cost, you do have to download it separately. Later in this lecture, I will also explain what are the different versions of Power BI available and how do you download it. But before we get into that, let us try and understand what is Power BI and is it a competitor to Excel? Is it a companion to Excel or is it a supplement or a complement to Excel? I will also open the link at the same time. This is the official Power BI documentation that has been given by Microsoft, and it is very, very detailed. You can see that they have started with the basics, then they're talking about very advanced topics like APIs. They have talked about external connections like using React for creating your own visualizations. And very nicely, everything has been categorized into different buckets. Do I recommend that you go through this one by one? Not at all. In fact, most of these things would be completely irrelevant to you because these are meant for IT teams. These are meant for developers who are creating and modeling rather than doing the analysis and the data visualization. But this should always be on your bookmark because as you continue to learn on Power BI more and more, you will have to constantly keep on coming back to this to read the documentation. So make sure to keep this with you somewhere. So Power BI is a collection of services, apps, connectors that work with unrelated sources of data. So this part is very important. It is meant to handle unclean data. It is meant to handle fragmented data. And it obviously creates a visually immersive output, which is aesthetically pleasing. And everything is interactive and dynamic. Now, the data to which we are connecting can be an Excel spreadsheet or it can be anything else. So it can be something which is on the cloud. It can be hybrid, which is a on-premise hybrid, which also has some element on the cloud. And the idea here is that you can connect to data sources and visualize and then share it with everybody else. If I can go quickly to the Power BI website, that also explains this really well in terms of what Power BI is aimed at doing. So you will see here that the idea is to create a data-driven culture in the organization. And we usually refer to this as self-service. This means that you do not need to get an IT team to give you the data that you need. You will be able to help yourself create the right visualizations, extract the data, and do all the calculations that you require. You will understand this in more detail, but keep in mind that Power BI can be used by an individual, a small business, as well as a large enterprise scale process as well. Without question, Power BI is the number one business intelligence tool in the market. Gartner comes up with a magic quadrant every year. So this is the latest one that came in February 2021. And you can see that Power BI is at the top, followed by Tableau, then Click. These three are in the top quadrant. Other than this, there are many others. So we have IBM Cognos, SAP BI, SAS, Oracle BI, so on and so forth. But then Microsoft Power BI is clearly the number one in the market. Now, there are different elements in Power BI, and we will be covering all of these later in the course. And the three things that most commonly you would be working on are Power BI Desktop, which is the desktop application on which you are working. Keep in mind that Power BI is only available for Windows, not for the Mac, and we don't expect that that will happen. But you can, of course, work on Power BI on the service, which means directly on the cloud. It does have some features that are a little lesser, but then it is still a full featured, as close to a full featured online BI tool as you would expect. And then Power BI mobile is also a companion, so you can see the dashboards on your smartphone as well. The smartphone, interestingly, is available for both the iOS and the Android devices, despite Power BI not being available for the Mac. There are some additional elements as well. So we have what is called the report server, which is a specialized version of Power BI, which is used when organizations are working with SQL. And then we also have the paginated reports, which is used for creating documents with a lot of precision. For example, when you want pixel precision, you want all the boxes, all the numbers, all the tables to be exactly where you want it to be. Then we have a downloadable application, which is the paginated report. The report server and paginated reports. Now, when you're working on premise, that's where the report server comes into play, because a lot of organizations are not matured enough to be on the cloud entirely. And that's where the report server is better, because you can have everything on premise. How does Power BI connect to Excel? This is a big question. And if you notice the first 80% of a development process, you will see that whether the data is online or on-prem, you can use Power Query to do ETL, which is to connect to the data and transform it, for which we use the M engine. And for data modeling, we use the DAX engine. Two topics that we would be covering today. And the final 20%, which is the reporting and the dashboarding, is where you have a choice between Excel and Power BI. But why is it that I'm mentioning Power Query and data modeling separately? Because Power Query and DAX are available even in Excel. So if your requirement is to create simple dashboards, then you don't really need Power BI. But the moment you say that I want to work with AI and ML features, I want to work with enterprise level data, that is where Power BI is the tool of choice. So while Excel is also increasing its capabilities with time, you would not expect Excel to be at the same level as Power BI going forward. Once again, like I said earlier, the authoring environment remains the same, because Power Query, Power Pivot is available in both. But the difference being that Power BI is a better visualization tool. And again, Power BI is not meant to replace Excel. In fact, in Excel, now when you make a pivot table, there is a connection with Power BI, so you can use Power BI data to create a pivot table as well. I have given a very large, detailed comparative list of what Excel does and what Power BI does, so you can have a look at this. Like I said earlier, when you insert a pivot table, you can see that I can insert a pivot table from Power BI as well. And this is fantastic, because this means that there is an integration. Users who do not have Power BI or do not want to work on it or haven't learned it yet, they can still use Power BI datasets inside their Excel application. You will find all the details mentioned on this link. Power BI, being a Microsoft product, also has excellent integration with Microsoft Teams. And now let's look at the different components. Number one, Power Query. Power Query is an ETL tool. It's a data prepping tool. We will discuss this in detail later. But in one line, it's a tool which allows you to extract, transform, and load data, which allows you to prepare data. And there are many transformations that you can do in it. And even though there is a formula language here, which is called M, it is all command based. If you do not want to go through the route of writing formulas, everything is available in the commands as well. Then we have DAX, which is data analysis expressions. And DAX is available on Power BI, on SQL Server Analysis Services, as well as Excel through Power Pivot. And it uses an engine called the tabular engine. DAX is very similar to Excel, but much more powerful. And DAX in one line is used for creating formulas and functions when you're working with data models, which means when multiple data sets are connected to each other. Of course, you can create relational databases as well inside Power BI. We have a lot of AI powered analytics. Some of these have been introduced. Some of these will be introduced in the future, but we will be covering a few of them today. Power BI can also connect to external tools. That means that other developers can add their own tools to Power BI, which adds to the capabilities. This is all very advanced stuff, but it's good to know that these features are there. It also offers an excellent application lifecycle management. So when you're working with dozens of reports and dashboards and you're sharing it with different people, giving them different levels of access, that is where the application lifecycle management and the lineage will come into play. So we have the data lineage, like I said, and the impact analysis. So you can see here that if I can increase the size, you can see that I have the SQL server from which we are getting the data, we are combining it with other data sets, and then we are creating a dashboard. We also refer to something which is called the building blocks, and it is available on this link, which I'm going to open. And the building blocks are dashboards, reports, workbooks, datasets, and data flows. And all of this is organized into what we call workspaces. And at an organization level, you give something called capacities. We will be discussing this going forward, but just keep in mind this term, which is called building blocks, because very often you will see that people refer to building blocks of Power BI. Now let's see how we can download Power BI. The link has been given. There are two ways of downloading it. Number one, you can go to the Microsoft Store. So if I can open my store, Microsoft Store, you can simply go and search for Power BI, and you can download Power BI Desktop. Do not download the other one which only says Power BI, because this is something different. So you can see that this only allows you to view the data, but if you want to create dashboards, you need Power BI Desktop. The other option is to do a direct download. For direct download, you can simply go online and search for Power BI download. Open the first link that appears. Select advanced download options. So when you click on download, it will redirect you to the Microsoft Store. But in certain organizations, the store might be disabled. So that is why you have to click on advanced download options. And then simply select download and then select the version that you want. If your laptop is from the last 5-6 years, in all likelihood, it must be a 64-bit version that you need. Now, the difference is that Microsoft Store gets updated automatically if you download Power BI from there. But if you do a direct download, you have to uninstall and reinstall every month, because the cadence of Power BI is monthly. So every month, new features are added. Minimum requirements are not very high. It is not supported on Windows 7, but very few people still work on Windows 7. 2 GB RAM is enough, but 4 GB is recommended. But needless to say, more the better. Now, a very important point here is that this resolution might be a big problem. So if you're working on a 1280-800 or a 1024-768, some controls might not be visible. So the minimum that you require is 1440-900, 1600-900, right? So this is the at least which is there. And it recommends a 1 gigahertz. That should not be a problem at all. Before starting, if you simply want to look at what people around the world have created with Power BI, you can go to this community website. And here you can see that there are hundreds of reports across multiple industries and sectors that people around the world have created. And this is an excellent way of understanding what Power BI is capable of. And more importantly, what can it do for you? Because I'm sure that all of you have different requirements. And finally, let's come to the pricing. Power BI is completely free to use. You can download it and you can use all the visuals, all the Power Query options, write all the formulas completely free of cost. But the difference is that you cannot share your reports on the cloud. It has to be sent on an email, like you send an Excel file, like that. And if you want to log in to Power BI to save it on the cloud, it will ask you for an organization account. Right, so just keep that in mind. I will discuss this later as well, but just keep in mind that even to sign in, you need to have an organization account. But if you want to share it with others, you need to have an organization account, plus you need to have a paid account. How much does it cost? $720 per month for Power BI Pro. Power BI Premium per user is $1440, so double. And then you also have per capacity, which is for organizations with a large number of people. So it is about 3.5 lakhs per month. There are many factors that come into play when it comes to deciding which one of these licenses you need. If you're working with an organization, then it's best to call up Microsoft so that they can guide you through this. As a matter of fact, there is also something called the Power BI calculator. And let me see if I'm able to find the right link. All right, I'm not able to find the right link here, but this link is good because it gives you a very detailed comparison of all the different Power BI versions out there, as you can see. Excellent. So in this lecture, everyone, we have seen what Power BI is, what it can do for you, and most importantly, what are the components in it. In the next lecture, we will have our first look at Power BI. There are a few settings that we will change, and then immediately we will start creating dashboards. Hi everyone. In this lecture, we will look at the interface for the first time, and we will also understand what type of data sources can Power BI connect to. And then finally, we will connect to our first file and then start to create a dashboard. I'm going to highlight different areas for you. So the first time you open Power BI, in fact, let me do it once again. So the first time you open Power BI, you will see that there is a splash screen that appears like this. In the top right corner, you will see that I have already signed in. But like I mentioned earlier, you can create a free account, but it will have to be an organization account. What that means is that you cannot have an ID which is at Gmail or Yahoo or Outlook. You will need to have an organization account for this. Should you worry if you do not have an organization account? For example, maybe you're a student. Not really. One reason is that even if you're a student and a ID has been given to you by the institute, you should be able to use it in all likelihood. The catch is that once you leave the college and then the ID is discontinued, then you will lose access for files that you have saved on the cloud. But then remember, you can also save them locally. Let me explain what that means. Even if I have not signed in, all right, let's say I don't have an organization account and I have not signed in, I can still press Control S and save it on my computer. For example, like to save an Excel file, I'm just going to call this BI overview. It will save it as a PBIX file and I'll save it on my desktop. As you can see, we have the file here. You can attach it on an email and send it to whoever you want to without any problem. But yes, if you want to publish it and if you want to share it with other people, then you need to have an organization account, right? Let's identify the other parts of the interface. So we have different tabs here: home, insert, modeling, view, help, and external tools. Then on the left side, we have three buttons. The first one is the report view, where we are currently. The second one is the data view, which allows us to see the data. And the third one is the modeling button, which allows us to connect different data sets together. On the right side, we have some visualizations. But remember, we can also download more visuals from more visuals. There's also a filter pane, which allows us to filter the data. And then on the right side, we have the fields, which is similar to how you have a pivot table and a list of all the columns given here. At the bottom, you have different pages. We don't call them sheets like Excel, we call them pages. And you can insert many pages. and you can have a different report on each page. As you can see, the interface is very simple, and it is also very similar to Microsoft Office applications, which is good. But do keep in mind that it is a different application. It is not the same as Excel and PowerPoint. So what you expect to work in Excel and PowerPoint might not work in Power BI or might work a little differently. So just keep that in mind. The first thing we want to do, even before connecting to the data set, is to go to File and then go to Options and Settings and then select Options once again. Now, here there are many options available. Let me just quickly take you through them. Data load is something you don't need to mess around with. Let it be the default. Don't change it. Power Query Editor as well. You don't need to change anything. Direct Query is only one option, only used when you are connected to SAP. So we don't really need it. Then we have R and Python. So Power BI has an inbuilt environment for R and Python. So if it is installed on your computer, like it is installed on mine, you can see the directory is connected. If it doesn't select the correct directory, you can always go and select on your own. In security settings, again, I don't recommend changing anything. Let it be. Same goes for privacy. Regional settings, again, you don't need to mess around with. Updates are not required. Usage data is not required. Diagnostics might be required if you're working in IT, because sometimes you might need to enable the crash dump collection, but for 99% of you, not required. This is the important one. Power BI has a monthly update cycle, which means that every single month there are new updates that come in. If I can quickly hop over to my browser and explain to you what I mean by that. If I type Power BI monthly update, Power BI monthly update, you will see that. Do you see this? May 2021 feature summary. So every month there is an update that happens. And does it mean that it's a minor change? Not at all. Every month there is a massive change that happens. And in the last 2.5 years, I think only 1 month was left out. I think it was December. To my memory, I think every month there has been some update that comes in. Updates might be addition of new functions, features, formulas, visuals, a bunch of different things. Maybe they're adding different connectors, they are improving the AI capability. Now, this means that a lot of these features are in preview. That means that the feature is in preview when it is still in a alpha or a beta stage. So you can enable it if you want to work on it. And usually within 3 to 4 months, it will get added and it will become what we call GA, which is general availability. So a lot of features that we have in Power BI today were at some point a preview feature, and of course now they have become a part of the application. Just select all of them. Even though we are not going to use all of them, it's easier for you to select all of them than for me to tell you which ones to select. Select all of them and click on OK. Now keep in mind that if you are selecting them for the first time, there would be a prompt that tells you that you will have to restart Power BI. So please do that. Close the Power BI application and reopen it. And once you have done that, please come back to the lecture. All right, so auto recovery and report settings, again, you don't need to change this. Maybe in auto recovery, you can save the auto recovery every 2 minutes if you need to, but I think the 10 minutes works fairly well. Then you have some other options for data loading, regional settings. Only this one you might want to change. If you're working for an international client, for example, you might want to choose their locale so that the DMY format and the currency comes properly. And then you have some other random settings. But as you can see, we have not changed much. I have only told you that R and Python, if you do work on it, might be required. And you need to select regional settings, English India in our case. And then also in preview features, you have to select all the features one time, right? And keep in mind that preview features also get added every month. So I recommend that every 30-40 days, please go and see if any more preview features have been added. All right, so we're all set up and we can start to create our first dashboard. So we will create a dashboard, and yes, you will have many questions, and the questions will get answered later in the course. But for now, we are going to focus on understanding how does a dashboard even look? How is it different to Excel? So we will create a simple dashboard and then we will deconstruct it, and I will take you through every single part of the dashboard one by one in more detail later. We want to connect to a data set, but which data set do we want to connect to? You will find this file in the resources folder. It is called Global Superstore Orders 2016. In fact, I'm going to rename this. I'm just going to call this Global Superstore Orders. Why are we working on this specific data? Let me open it and show it to you. As you can see, it's a very nice data set. We have about 50,000 records with us. We have 24 columns, and we have the sales for an organization that is selling multiple products to different segments and customers around the world. So we have 165 countries that have been given here in the data, including India. And then, of course, we have details for the product, the subcategory, the business segment, and we also have the sales quantity, discount, and profit. The data is given for 4 years, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Now, the question is, why this data? What is so special about it? If you go to Google and type Global Superstore, you will see that it is available everywhere. What is so popular about it? Why is it available everywhere? If you do an image search, you will see that there are hundreds of dashboards that people around the world have created on Power BI, Tableau, Excel, and other tools. Now, the reason this specific dataset is so popular is because this is available for free as a part of Tableau. So if you're working on Tableau, then this is an inbuilt dataset. And that's the reason a lot of people have started to learn data visualization on this specific dataset. And that's what makes it so popular. All right. So we have seen the data, but let's go through the column one by one. Row ID, order date, shipping date. There are 4 types of shipping mode. We have customer ID and name. Business segment, there are 3 types. Consumer, corporate, home office. Then we have from column I till column N, we have the geographic data, which is market, region, country, state, city, and postal code. After that, we have the product details, which would be the product ID, category, subcategory, and product name. We are selling 3 categories and there are 17 subcategories. After that, we have sales quantity, discount, profit, and shipping cost. And then finally, the order priority, which is critical, high, low, and medium. So very simple, clean data set. Let me close it. And we come back to Power BI. And we want to connect this Excel file. You will notice that there are many ways of connecting to a file. I can click on import data from Excel. I can select get data from another source. We can click on get data here. We can select Excel here, and we can also click on get data on this. And it might seem very odd to you as to why are there so many different ways of doing the same thing. I can't really answer that question, but my job is to tell you to not to worry. They all do the same thing. It's just that Microsoft has given you many different ways of connecting to the file. So we will do it the proper way, which is to click on get data. And you can see that we have many data types available. We have Excel, Power BI, something called DataFLOWS, SQL Server, Dataverse, which used to be Common Data Services earlier, CDS. It has now become Dataverse. Then we have text, CSV. But is that all? Not at all. If we click on more, you will see that we have many data sets available. So we have different types of files, we have different types of databases, we have the Microsoft Power Platform, we have Microsoft Cloud, we have other online services, And we also have some random data connectors that includes R, Python, Hadoop, and so on and so forth. A lot of these are also in beta, which means that they might not work 100% properly. They're still being tested, but they will get added at some point. But for now, we want to connect to a simple Excel file. So I will select Excel and click on Connect. On my desktop, we have the Global Superstore orders dataset. When we select the Excel file, the first thing that will happen is that the navigator pane will open, and it is showing me two options, orders and table 1, because orders is the sheet while table 1 is the table. You can select either one, but if you do work with tables and you are more comfortable with them, I would always suggest that you select a table. But if you don't have a table in your data and if it's only a sheet, you can select that as well. There are two options available. One is load, the other is transform. Transform is something we use when we want to take the data to Power Query, which means we want to prep the data or we want to make some transformations on it. But for now, we don't want to do that. We simply want to click on load. This process is very similar to working on pivot tables in Excel. And once the Excel file is loaded, you will see on the right side that we have a list of all the different columns from the Excel file. So here we have different types of data types. We have numbers, so discount, postal code, profit, quantity. We have some date values, so order date, ship date. And then we also have a lot of text values and geographic details. Now we can create our first visualization. And once we have done that, we get a sense of how visualizations are made. Then we will start to look at every single element of the visuals, the different types of charts in much more detail. Hi everyone. In the previous lecture, we saw the interface, we got comfortable with it, and we also connected to our Excel file. Now we want to create our first dashboard. You can see we have a list of visuals in the visualization pane. And I want to start by selecting the second one, which is the stacked column chart. The moment you click on it, the visual appears like this. We do not need the filter pane for now, so I'm going to minimize it. And in the chart, we can now start to put different fields to populate the visual. You simply have to drag and drop it. So we have axis, legend, value, small multiple, and tooltips, the different options available. We will select order date and put it in the axis. Then I will select my sales and put it in the value. And let's just stop at that point. Let's not do anything else. You see that we get a visual and it looks great. But then what makes it special? I mean, this is something we could have done on Excel as well, isn't it? What makes it special is the fact that we have these arrows at the bottom. I'm not doing this in detail since we will do this later, but just to quickly give you an example, when I click on the double arrow, it will go to the next level. So it will show me the quarter. Let's go back to the up arrow. And if I click on the expand button, it will show me all the quarters. How cool is that? This means that we can drill down and drill up in our data. So we can look at the aggregated or the granular value as per our requirement. We don't have to make multiple charts. On this visualization, let me go back to the year. We also want to add a border and a shadow effect. In the formatting option, you can go to border, enable it, and also enable the shadow like this. So we get our first chart. But we would also like to make a map which shows us all the states in India. To do this, we will select the map. Let's put it on the right side. And in the map, we will select country and drag it to the location. We will select state and drag it below the country, and then select the city and drag it below the state. Once you have done that, you can also select sales and put it in the size. But then we don't really need to see all the countries, right? We just want to look at India. To do that, open up the filter pane, and in the country block, simply do a basic filtering for India, select it, and now you can see it only shows you India here. But the point is that if you're only showing India, then why do you need country in the location? So you can delete it by clicking on the cross, and now it shows you all the states and the cities like this. Let me also add a border and a shadow. But then how do you go to the city? I'm sure most of you can guess it by now. When I click on the expand button, it will show me the cities like this. Let's also make a slicer. And let's keep it here. And in the slicer, we want to keep our order date like this. Just like earlier, we want to make a border and a shadow. And you will see that everything is connected. That means when I move my slicer, you will notice that both the visuals are getting impacted when I choose a different time period. Even better, even the visuals are connected to each other. That means that if I only select 2015, you notice that the values are changing. So for the entire period, it is 76,000, but for 2015, it is 20,000, like this. And just to end it, let us also select a card. The card is used for showing a KPI. So in the card, we will select the sales value. I'll make it a little smaller. Just like earlier, we can apply a border and a shadow. You can copy and paste this and remove the sales and put the profit here. And I'm sure all of you can guess this, but when I click on 15, you can see that everything is changing. The map is also changing and the cards are also changing. How cool is that? So I hope all of you like the example. And in under 5 minutes, we have managed to create a beautiful dashboard, which is completely dynamic. And it would have been almost impossible to do this on Excel. What we want to do now is to look at the different types of visualizations that we have available. So broadly speaking, we have inbuilt, we have custom, and we can also create our own. I will discuss this in the next lecture. Hi everyone. In the last lecture, we had created our first dashboard, and now we will look at the different types of visualizations that are available. Now, in terms of visuals, we have the inbuilt ones, and there are quite a few of them. It is much more powerful already than what you have available on Excel. But in addition to this, we also have custom visualizations available. I will tell you how to use them shortly. And you can see there are hundreds of them available. In addition to inbuilt and custom visuals, you can also create your own. Now, if you're a programmer, of course, you can use JavaScript to create them. If you're not a programmer, even then, Microsoft has given you a beautiful tool called CHARTICULATor that allows you to create your own custom visuals with zero programming. This is how the interface looks. And it's simply drag and drop, and it allows you to create your own visuals. Do keep in mind that this is very new and it is Despite not being coding, it is still very complicated, so it will take you time to learn it. All right, let's come back to the first report that we created. I'm going to insert a new page, and on this new page, let me take one visual and explain it in more detail to you. We'll make a column chart, keep the order date and the sales value in it. All right, let's make it a little large. Before we come to formatting, let us identify the options that have already been given to us. You can see that we have 4 types of arrows available. So we have the drill up, we have the drill down, we have the next level, and we have the expand. After that, we have an option, an icon for filters and slices. We have a focus mode, and then we have some additional options. Let's go over all of them one by one. At the moment, I'm looking at 12, 13, 14, and 15. So if we click on any column, you notice nothing happens. We simply select it. But if I click on the drill down button, if I activate it, and now we click on any one of the years, it goes inside the year and it tells me that these are the 4 quarters within 2015. And if I continue to do this, it tells me that these are the 3 months in 2015 in quarter 4 in the month of November. And obviously it goes up till the day level. To go back up, we can simply click on the drill up. Let me turn it off. Then we have the next level, which means that if I click on it, it is aggregating the values for all the 4 years and only showing us the 4 quarters. So we have Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 for all the 4 years that have been combined. If I click on it, it shows us that December has done 1566662 as an aggregate in the last 4 years. And then we have the expand button, which we have already seen. The expand will expand the data into quarters and month and dates like this. So that is how the drill down works. The drill down is available with most of the visuals that you have. And the way it works is very similar. Then we have the filter and slicer. As you can see, right now it is telling me that no filter and slicer is affecting the visual right now. So we can ignore it. In filters, if I have some filter applied, for example, I am not selecting one of the years. So let's say we are only selecting 2012, 13, 14, but not 15. Now you notice that it gives you a small box telling you that Habish, there is a filter that has been applied. Right? Let me cancel this. So you can click on this clear filter button to cancel the filter. And let me close this. The focus mode will expand the visual like this. So if you're presenting and if you want to show to the audience this one particular visual in all its glory and you want to expand on it, this is what you do. And you can also go back to the report. Then we have the more options button where we have export data, where not the visual but the data can be exported as a CSV file. We can also show it as a table, which means that I can see the table and the visual at the same time. And we can also click on the switch button if you want to switch to a vertical layout like this. Let us go back. And then of course you have remove, which is simply delete, and you have spotlight. Spotlight highlights the visual like this. So it sort of just emphasizes it. Let me show it to you on the previous page. So if I select and I say spotlight, you will notice that this one particular visual gets highlighted while everything else gets de-highlighted. But there is one more option which you cannot see right now since we only have the years with us. But if I click on the expand button and we have the quarters, now you notice that we have sort ascending and sort descending as well. And it is asking us, what type of sort do we want to look at? So it is saying, do you want to see the data chronologically, which means from 2012, the oldest date on the left, to 2015, the latest date on the right, or do you want to sort by the sales value? So if we sort by the sales value, you will notice that now the data is not chronological, it is as per the sales value, with Q4 15 being the highest and Q1 12 being the lowest. At any point, you can also change the sort direction, and you can also change it back to a year quarter like this. So it's handy to have these tools because you don't have them on Excel. Then we have the legend, which means that if we select our segment and put it in the legend, then it will break my column into three parts. And you can see the legend here: consumer, corporate, and home office. We also have small multiples. So if we put the ship mode in the small multiple, it breaks our chart into four parts like this. Now I agree with you, and you must be thinking, but Havish, does it really look good? Because I can't really see the numbers in the same day, since the numbers are so small and everything is on the same scale. So usually when you're using small multiple, what you do is not to select the normal column chart, you will select the 100% stacked column chart, the last one in the first row. And I'm sure all of you can see how nice this visual is, because in one single visual, you're able to show the segment-wise breakup and also show different visuals for each of the four shipping modes that we have. All right. We also have something called tooltips, and let's see how that works. Right now, if I take my mouse and hover it over any one of these bars, you will see that it tells me the ship mode, the year and the quarter, segment, and the sales value, which is great. But what if you want to see additional details? Maybe the average sale price, maybe the profit, maybe the quantity, maybe the unique number of customers. This is how we would do it. We can simply select, let's say, the profit and put it in the tooltip. And you can see that it shows us an additional value for the profit as well. We can put the sales value one more time in tooltips. But then why would you like to look at the sales value two times? Because on the drop down, we can change it to the average. So now it is telling me that total sales is 17,000, profit is 4,000, and the average transaction size is 346. How do you see the number of transactions? You can simply put the customer ID in tooltips, and I'll do it two times. In the first one, we will rename it and we'll call it EX for transactions. And in the next one, we will rename it and we will call it the unique. All right, let me do it once again. So in unique, we will select distinct count, and then customer ID comes one more time, and here we change it to the count. And let me rename it and call this TX. Let me explain what all we have done. So right now when I take my mouse, it is going to tell me that sales was 30,000, which is 40% of the total sales. Profit was 4,000. Average transaction size was 194. There were 81 unique customers who overall purchased 158 times from us. So cool, right? Because we can't do this on Excel. Excel can't show additional tooltips. We can, but it's not as powerful and as flexible as this. And Power BI makes the entire process so much simpler in any case. I'm going to copy this visual on another page, and let's remove the legend and the shipping mode, and let me change it back to a column chart. All right. Let us also see the formatting options that we have. So next to field, the first one is the fields. Next to that, you have format. And here you can see that we have many options available. It would be impossible for me to take you through every single one, because if I do that, then every visual will take me 30 minutes. The reason I'm saying that is to tell you that Power BI offers you a lot of flexibility. So make sure to spend some time and learn every small formatting option available in a visual, and not use additional visuals. I've seen a lot of people who feel we should use 15 different types of visuals in a report. But that is not important. It is more important to customize the visual as much as possible. Let us see how we do that. So you can see that in x-axis, I can change the color. I can increase the text size. And I can also hide, or rather turn off, the option called concatenate labels. What it means is my labels will be concatenated like this. It looks much better, especially when you're looking at, just a moment, when you're looking at the year and the quarter together, you can concatenate it. And then there are many other options available, as you can see. I will not, like I said, I will not go through every single one, but even the smallest of things, like the type of stroke that we want. Let me change the color so you can see it clearly. Look at this. Even these small things can be customized. Similarly, we have the y-axis, and then we have something called the zoom slider. What it means is that I will get a slider on the y-axis, and if I only want to see values which are greater than 500,000, we can simply move it like this. And as you can see, it is only showing me values that now are greater than 500,000. Very cool. And the best part is that you do not need to make another visual or another slicer. This happens inside the visual itself. Then you have data colors. In data colors, either you can change the default color for all the columns, or you can click on show all and choose every color independently. Now that might not make a lot of sense, because then it's not dynamic if you change the colors one by one. And what we do usually is to go to the conditional formatting option, which is the FX button. And here we can select color scale. The field would be the sales value. And we will say that if the sales value is low, it should be light blue. If it is high, it should be dark blue. And just see how nice the result looks like this. Obviously, you can also edit it and put your own colors. Then in data labels, we have obviously data labels. In data labels, you have many other things like changing the orientation, the position. For example, you want to show it inside the column. So make sure to have a look at these. You can even show the background, something that I personally like to do. After that, we have the plot area. If you want to add an image at the back, this I usually ignore. Then you obviously have the title, you have the background. So for example, if you want to put a different color for the background, something like this, you can do that. So let me change it back to white. After that, we have border and shadow, which we have already seen. But remember, even in border and shadow, you have many other options. So you can change the border radius. You can also change the border color. You can even make it conditionally formatted. That means that if the condition is met, then the border color will be a different color. Similarly, in shadow, you have many options. So you can choose the shadow position, and you can also choose the preset. For example, if I say bottom, now you notice that the shadow is only coming at the bottom of the vision. So make sure to explore all of these options. After that, we have another tooltip, which I will be covering later. And finally, we have the visual header. What the visual header means is that, let me give you an example. You can see that here we have an option for every small thing. Visual information, warning, error, drill on, drill up, drill down. So every option that you have here, it can be disabled. That means that if I remove, let's say, the drill up icon, right now as the author of the report, you can still see it. But when you publish the report and you send it to other people, the end user will not be able to see this option. As you can see, visual header means that we can turn it on or off, and the changes will only be applied in the reading view. That means since we are the author, obviously to us, all the options are always available. But to the reader, if you turn off something when you share the report, they will not be able to view it. But for now, I'm going to keep everything enabled. After this, we also have the analytics button. And in this, at least in the column chart, we only have a single option, which is called the constant line. And here you can see that we can add a constant line and you can put a value here. So I'm just going to put, let's say 500,000, and a line appears like this, and some basic formatting options can be done as well. Excellent. So in this lecture, everyone, we have seen the column chart, but we have gone in detail in the formatting and we have seen all the different options that are available. Let's do one last example before we move on to the next lecture. I'm going to duplicate the page. So right click and duplicate. And what I want to say here is that there is a condition. So if the value is greater than 500,000, it should be green in color. And if it is less than 500,000, it should be yellow in color. To do this, we go to Format, Data Color. I click on Conditional Formatting. And rather than selecting a color scale, we will select a rule. And the rule will be based on the sum of sales, where we say that if the value is greater than 0, but it is less than 500,000, then the color should be yellow. Let's add another rule. And if it is greater than 500,000 and it is less than a large number, so let's just put a really large number here, then it should be green in color. As you have seen, we have put a conditional formatting, which is like an if statement. And when you click on OK, very nicely, all the values that are less than 500,000 are yellow and the ones that are more are green. So that completes the lecture. In the next lecture, I will introduce the different types of charts that are available to you. Hi everyone. In the last lecture, we looked at a single chart, which was our column chart, but we went very deep in all the formatting options to try and see the different changes that we can make to it. In this lecture, we will continue with the same topic of charts, and we are going to look at the table, matrix, correlation, decomposition, Q&A, analyze, summarize, maps, and we will also look at some custom visuals. But before we do any of this, it is very important to understand how do we even decide what type of chart we want. The idea is not to randomly choose one that looks pretty, but then it has to be a chart that fits well with our requirement. The resources folder, I have shared a few PDFs and a few images with you. I'm going to walk you through them, but please make sure to use them later as a reference and also read the reports that I have given to you. They will help you immensely. Let me open one. This is a very nice reference and it asks you what do you want to show. So if you want to show static comparison for countries, you can make a map. Then another option is to look at radar when you want to look at features, and you get the idea. The idea here is that it is not that one chart is better than the other one. It depends completely on the context. But one chart might be suitable for the type of data that you're trying to present. For example, if I want to show composition, which means the breakdown of different items, and if I want to show few series with sub-composition, that means there is an additional level, then we can make what is called a MEKKO chart. Or if you have many series of cumulative items, you can do a TREEMAP. We will go through all of them, but I just want to give you an idea of how to use a reference like this. Then I have also given you another visual for picking a chart. So as you can see, it explains what type of messages you want to deliver and what type of chart should you be creating. After this, we have something very similar, but much simpler as well. Then there is a data visualization ebook by HubSpot. And this is not just about charts, it's also about how to decide how you want to present your data. It's not a very large or a very long report, but they explain each chart in a lot of detail and tell you what type of data is best represented using that. I strongly urge you all to have a look at this. So depending on whether you have internal or external stakeholders, what type of data would you want to present and what should be the story behind that data. And then there is another report by Chartio, which again talks about how to choose the right data visualization. So you can see here there are different topics that they have explained. So they have broken charts into basic, uncommon, and advanced types. And then change over time, distribution, comparison, and relationships. These are the four paths that you have, which you have to decide when you're making a chart. All right, so these are the guides that I have given to you. I strongly urge you to have a look at it. Now, in terms of the basic charts that are available, we have our stat bar, we have our stat column, then we have our bar, we have our column, we have our 100% bar, we have our 100% column. I'm sure most of you would have done this on Excel, but I'm still going to do this on Power BI to quickly recap how they work. After this, we have the area chart. Then we have a combination chart, let's say sales and profit together. This is not available on Excel, which is the SANKEY. Then we have the waterfall. Then we have the funnel. Then we have the scatter, pie, donut, table, matrix, and the tree map. So all of these are the common charts that we have. Let me take you through them one by one. Coming back to the same OBI file, I'm going to make the first one, which is the stat bar chart. And in this, we will keep sales and our order date. And let me also keep the segment in the legend so it looks like this. I'll also add a border and a shadow. And copy paste it 2 times. And you can see here that in the second one, we will change it to a column chart. And the third one will become a clustered bar. Now let me copy all these three. And then change the fourth one into clustered column. The fifth one is a 100% stacked bar, and the sixth one is a 100% stacked column. Let me explain the advantages of using each of them. The bar is easier to read than the column because people read left to right, not bottom to top. Even though the column is more common, I would suggest use the bar as much as possible. Then we have the 100%. So we have the 100% column and we have the 100% bar. Again, here you can see the percentage as well. So in the first one, you can only see the value. But in this one, you can see the percentage contribution as well, both in the column and the bar. And then you have the stacked. The stacked is helpful if you want to look at the total. That means if I want to identify which year has had the highest value, I can only do that in a 100%, in a stat column or in a stack bar. Right? Let me explain that once again. So in the first two, I can see which year is the highest, which is 2015. And I can also see the breakup, but not the percentage. In the third one and the fourth one, we can very clearly see more detail. So I can see all the three segments in individual columns, so I can compare them, but I cannot see the total. So I can't say which year is the highest just by looking at it. And in the fifth and the sixth one, we can see the percentage contribution, but we cannot see the year that is doing the highest because all of them are completely filled. Let's go on. And here I want to make my line chart, and the second one is going to be the area chart. There's not much to explain here. We have the line and the area chart. Let me also increase the width a little bit so that you can look at it. All right. Now, obviously, if I click on the drill down on the expand button, it shows me all the quarters. Here as well, shows me all the quarters. In fact, it shows me, yeah, so it shows me all the quarters on both sides. They're exactly the same. The only difference is that in the line chart, the area under the line is not filled, but here it is filled. That's the only difference. We also have an alternative here, which is called the stacked area chart. Not used very commonly, and you have to be very careful when you're using this. What happens in the stacked is that, as you can see, it is telling me that the consumer segment is 572. Then we have corporate, which is 368. And then we have home office, which is 254. The advantage of making the stacked area chart, let me click on the focus mode. You can see that the advantage here is that it tells me the cumulative. So it tells me that if I add all of these three, then it adds up to about 1.5 million, which you cannot do with the regular area chart, right? So this is great for comparison, but if you want to look at the cumulative, then the stacked area is a good alternative. Let's move on. Here we want to look at our line and stack column. So let me remove the segment and let me keep the profit in column. I'm sorry, in my line value. So very nicely, I can see the sales, which is the column, and I can also see the profit amount on the line like this. It would make more sense to make it a profit margin, but for now we can show the sales and the profit like this. All right, now let's look at the ribbon chart. I think I called this the SANKEY earlier when I was explaining it in the PowerPoint, but this is called the ribbon chart. So what the ribbon chart does is to show you the order date and the sales and the segment as well. At first glance, you might feel that it's the same as a stat column, and you're not incorrect. In fact, if I make it a stat column, you will notice that it looks very similar. The difference in the ribbon chart is that if I go to the ribbon, it also shows me the change from the previous year to the current year. So I can see there has been a 23% change like this. Very cool, right? There are a few formatting changes here that I can make. So I can go to my ribbons and say that there should be a little bit of spacing, so maybe 15. And I also want to increase the transparency to 90, so it looks like this. So it's almost like a stack column chart, but it makes the change also visible. For example, look at it now. So I can see the quarter-wise contribution, and I can also see the change happening from each previous quarter to the current quarter. In fact, if I go back to the line chart, let me just make the line chart once again. There are a few formatting options available. So let me make a single line like this. So we can see the 4 years and the 16 quarters. If I go to analytics, there are many more options available. If all of you remember, when we were covering the column chart, in the analytics option, we only have one option, which is the constant line. But in the line chart, we have many other options. So we have trend line, we can have constant line, obviously, Y and X. We have min, max, average, median, percentile, and most importantly, we have the forecast. So if I add a forecast for, let's say, 12 quarters, it automatically creates a forecast. Let me also click on the apply button. It creates a forecast like this, showing me the upper and the lower bound as well. Very handy. Now, this is not the most detailed or the most customizable forecasting that you can get, but it gets the job done for most of us. And later on, when we do custom visuals, I will show you how you can use our visuals to create more detailed and customizable forecasts. All right, then I have to show you the waterfall and the funnel as well. So let's do that. Let me make the waterfall. So in the waterfall chart, we can keep the order date and the sales value, and it shows me 4 columns for each of the years and a cumulative as well, which is an aggregate. And in my breakdown, if I keep my segment, very nicely it will tell me by how much has each segment grown YOY. So from 12 to 13, consumer grew by 24%, corporate grew by 11%, and home office also grew by 11%. But if you look at the next year, corporate had the highest growth, which was by 37%. It's an excellent way of presenting stepwise growth or variances that are happening over a period of time, like this. The funnel is used a lot in digital marketing. For example, you have customer acquisition, or you want to show the customer attrition. You want to show the number of calls that you made and the number of conversions that are happening, or the amount of traffic that is coming on a website. That is where the funnel comes into play. So on the funnel chart, we can very simply put the order date and the sales value, and it shows us 12, 13, 14, 15. And you can customize it quite a lot. Right now, what is it doing? It is telling me that if I assume that 12 is 100%, then 2013 is 118%. That means 1.18 times what 2012 did. This is 150% of the first one, that means compared to 12, and 127% of 13, which means compared to 13, like this. Then in formatting, you have a few options that you can manipulate. So you can see that I can, just give me a moment. All right, I'm not able to find the right option. That's okay. Let me just go to the label style, and you can see we have different options. So we have data value, percent of first, previous. So if I select data value and percent of previous, then it tells me that if I compare 13 to 12, 14 to 13, and 15 to 14, what is the change that is happening? So a little bit of customizability can be done here. So if we remove the order date and I keep something else, maybe my subcategory, since there are 17 of them, this gives us a very good perspective of the largest selling product and all the other products that are selling lesser than it. So it helps you create an index value. The next one we want to look at is the scatter chart. On this, we will spend a little bit of time. So we are going to do this in the next part of this course. We will do this in the next lecture where I'll show you the scatter. We will do the donut and the pie, and then we will do the table matrix and the tree map as well. Hi everyone. In this lecture, we will continue from where we left off. We want to look at the scatter chart, pie, donut, tree map, table, and matrix. Let's start with the scatter chart. So we select our scatter chart, and in this, we want to put our sales and profit. So sales is in the x-axis and profit is in the y-axis. And we also want to put the customer name in the details. So I can see all the customer names like this. Obviously, this is dynamic. Let me add a border and a shadow. So if you make a slicer, you can see that these are connected to each other. So if I move my order date, accordingly the scatter chart changes as well. So it looks very nice. And on the scatter chart, we have this beautiful option when we click on the 3 dots to create customer clusters. So we use an ML algorithm here, but you don't have to do any coding. What you do here is to define the number of clusters, let's say 5. And what it will do is automatically show clusters to you like this. So cluster 5 very clearly is this one, the pink one. So high sales and high profit, but cluster 3 is like very high sales and very high profit, right? And cluster 2 obviously being the lowest. And cluster 4 being the worst, which means that the sales are medium, but it's mostly negative profit, okay, like this. And obviously all of this is dynamic. Let's go on. Now let's look at our pie and donut. Very simple. So we have the pie. And we also have the donut. So in the pie, we will keep, in fact, let me first place the, okay, maybe not the region. Let's select sales and segment and the shipping, or maybe the category, which we haven't used up till now. Now, there are different ways of creating the pie chart. What we have done right now is to show all of the categories at the same time. So all of these blue ones are the categories. But then what if we don't want to show the categories at once? We want to give the user the option to drill down if they want to. So I can place the category below the legend in the segment. So that means that I can click on consumer. Obviously nothing will happen, but I have to click on the drill down button. And now when we click on consumer, it shows us the 3 categories within consumer. And if I go back up and I click on corporate, it shows me corporate. If I click on the double arrow, which is the next level, then it will not show me the segment. It will only show us the 3 categories for all the business. And if I click on the expand button, then it shows us a different color for every combination. So as you can see, there are different ways of playing around with it. It completely depends on you. There's nothing incorrect or correct here. Do what you feel is the best way to present your own data. We can also change it to a donut chart, which looks like this. Same concept, the visual looks a little better. But I prefer, especially when there are a very large number of values. For example, what if I kept the subcategory here as well, below this? Now you can see that this looks almost impossible to understand, isn't it? Even if I make it really large, it still doesn't help because the donut is not taking up a lot of space. So what we want to do is to convert this into a tree map on the right side. And I'm sure all of you will agree that this is a much better way of presenting the data. The highest combination is in the top left and the lowest is in the bottom right, like this. So just see how nice this looks. We have our 3 segments and I can click on either the drill down to the next level, or I can also go and say that I want to turn on the drill down. So I can click on corporate and see only the 3 categories and then the 4 subcategories like this. The tree map is considered as a much better alternative to the pie chart. In fact, there is an entire school of thought which says that pie charts are horrible. And despite them being so popular, we should not really use them as much as we should avoid them as much as possible. Let's look at the table and the matrix. So we have table and the matrix. Table is a simple table. That means it can only have columns in it, while the matrix is like a pivot table. So it can have both columns and rows in it. So in the table, if I place my category and my subcategory and my sales value, this is how it looks. If I do the same thing with a matrix, you can see that I have the ability of putting category in columns and the subcategory in rows. So it looks like this. Mostly matrices will be easier for you to work on because they offer you much more flexibility, but then you can see which one you want to use. While we're on the topic of tables, let's also see the options that we have. Tables, of course, have many options available. So alternate colors for the row and column, the styles that you want, the grid that you want. So make sure to spend some time here. What I want to do right now is to go to conditional formatting, and in sales, which is the only value that we have, we want to put a background color. So this is how it will look. And as you can see, it looks really nice. In fact, what I'll do is to remove the category from the column and place the segment. This way we'll have all the values. Back to conditional formatting. This is the background color. If we also turn on the font color, then we only get a heat map. which means the numbers are hidden, so to say. We also have the option of a data bar, just like we have on Excel. We have icons that we can keep, exactly like Excel. So as you can see, tables are very nice. And while you must be wondering, why are we creating tables on Power BI? Does it not defeat the purpose of creating a dashboard? Not at all. If you're creating a report or a dashboard, there are many cases where creating a table with maybe 10, 15 rows in it might be super handy, so that you don't have to present to the audience both an Excel file and a Power BI file. Let's also quickly look at the maps. We've already done it earlier in the first dashboard, but let's look at it in a little more detail. So in the map, the first one that we have, I'm going to select my sales and my country. Looks really nice. And if we go to format, you can see that only the category label can be added. Unfortunately, the label for the value cannot be added. So you can't show the sales value. You will have to hover your mouse to look at it. In the bubbles, you can also change the size of the bubble by increasing or decreasing it as you want to. Then in map controls, you can add zoom buttons that makes it easier for the people to click on the plus or the minus button. You also have a lasso, and I'm sure you can guess the lasso, which is here, allows you to select an area and you can sort of zoom in or highlight that specific area. Then in map styles, we have a few different options. So we have aerial, which is like this, similar to Google Maps. Then we have dark, then we have light, we have grayscale, and then we also have road. Road means that if you zoom in, you can actually see everything at a, let me just go to India. Let's not go randomly somewhere, right? So you can see at a road level, the complete map like this. All right. Now, what can be kept in the map? That means in the location, can we only keep the country? Not at all. We can keep country, state, city. We can even keep the postal code if you have it. And if you have the lat and long, nothing like it, that would be the most precise way to plot something on the map. Going back to formatting, we also have a heat map, which I personally don't use a lot, but you can definitely give it a try if you feel you like it. We have other types of maps available. So I can also select the filled map that looks like this. So we can see all the countries here. The colors all look the same because there's no conditional formatting, but we can always do that if we want to. We do have a shape map as well, but the shape map is only available for a few countries at the moment. So as you can see, we only have these countries available, but you can also import your own map keys, right? So the map key will be, I'm sorry, you can insert your own map, right? And you can select a JSON file. These are available freely on the internet. So any country that you want, you can get the JSON for that. And this is a little more detailed than the regular ones. So we have different types of projections for the United States that we're looking at right now. Then we also have the Azure map, which I will not be able to show you now because we don't have the correct fields with us. But you can Google it and see how the Azure map works. In fact, let me quickly go online and just show you the different types of maps in Power BI for those of you who do need to work on it a lot. And I want to show you um, a comparison of different types of maps in Power BI. All right. I can't seem to find the link that I remembered, but that's all right. Let me open one of these. Hold on. All right. This is the one I wanted to show you. These are the more advanced ones. So we have something called ArcGIS and we also have Mapbox. Both of these are leading map providers, um, and they help you visualize data on geographic parameters. ArcGIS is not available only for Power BI. It is available for many other platforms and it is very, very detailed. So is Mapbox. In fact, if I can just show you some ArcGIS maps, you can see how fantastic these are. They even have these 3D models, very detailed topographic information in them. Same goes for Mapbox. Mapbox also has these beautiful visualizations available for geographic data. Both of these have free accounts that you can create on them, and I definitely suggest that you have a look at it. So in Power BI, we have this option here, which is for your ArcGIS maps. Okay, once we have done the maps now, let's also look at what else I can show you. All right, let's look at something very different now. We will see on a new page what I really like to use, especially for work in the financial space, which is the decomposition tree. How this works is Microsoft calls this an AI visual. That's why you notice this AI symbol is available. The basic idea is that I can select sales and I can say that I want to explain this total value of 12.64 million by, let's say, the market. And if I click on the plus button, it shows me all the market sale, which looks very nice. But this is where it gets really interesting. What I can do now is I can break each of these into the regions as well. So I can select region and put it below the market. And now I can see all the regions for each of the markets just by clicking on it. So it is like a table, but it's a much more visual representation. And you get the idea. Any number of fields can be put below these. So maybe the segment comes below this. Then we have the category and then we have the subcategory. As you can see, I can select segment, I can select my category, and I can select my subcategory like this. It's a beautiful way of presenting the data. There are also some formatting changes that you can make. So in your, just a moment, let me find the correct one. Okay, so in the data bar, we have the scaling. So right now what is happening is that in every column, the maximum value is 100%. So you notice in United States, Western US is the highest. In market, Asia Pacific is the highest. In Southern US, consumer is the highest. But we can also change it to top node, which means that everything is being compared to the total sales value. And that's why you notice most of these are not even visible since the numbers are so small. Or you can set it to the parent node, which means that nothing will be 100% because consumer, corporate plus home office will add up to become 100%. Similarly, furniture, technology, office supplies will add up to become 100%. Right? So you can also customize it by setting your own start and end value. But if you're doing that, you have to make sure that all the numbers and all the cuts are at the same scale. All right. So that completes this lecture, everybody. And in the next lecture, I want to show you how we work on some AI visuals and how we can also ask questions to Power BI and automatically get some results. Hi, everyone. In this lecture, we will look at some AI visuals and we will start with creating a column chart. And in this, we will keep the order date and the sales value, something we have done multiple times. And as you can see from 14 to 15, there has been a growth. So from 3405,746, which is 3.4 million, we have become 4.2 million. Now, one thing I would like to know is the change that has happened and also know the reason behind this change. And this is very important because if I don't analyze the reasons, then I am not sure if every country, every segment, every category has shown a growth, or maybe only some of them have. To do this, I will right click on 50 and then select Analyze. As you can see, it has automatically detected that there has been an increase from 14 to 15. So I click on Explain the increase. And it tells me that, Havish, there has been a 26.25% increase from 14 to 15. And moreover, now it is giving me some more detailed analysis. Let me give you an example. Here it says that Europe and Asia Pacific accounted for the majority of the increase among the markets. That means while all the markets have grown YOY, Europe has grown by, as you can see, 331,000, 280,000. This is only 53,000. This is only 98,000. And you can also change it to a different type. So I can make it a scatter chart, or I can make it a simple comparative column chart, or I can even make it a ribbon chart, something we have done earlier. So I can see the change for each of the 5 markets that we have. If you like this analysis, you can click on the plus sign, and this new visualization will automatically get added to your report. And this is great because now you can say that, okay, from 14 to 15, this is the more detailed analysis that we have. Now remember, this analyze does not work everywhere. We only use it with the column chart. On the same visual, I also want to show you the summarize feature. Again, super useful. When we click on summarize, you will notice that it automatically creates an entire summary for me like this. Let me keep it on the right and also increase the size. And you can see that, I'm sorry, that's too large. Let's make it 16. You can see that it is telling me very nicely that the total sales has increased for the last 4 years. So every year there has been a growth. The sales jumped from 2.2 to 4.2 during this period, which is from 12 to 15. And this is an entire period of growth. How cool is that? And if you want to add something here, let's say I want to add average. Please watch this. Average sales transaction size was. How do you get that number now? We can click on value and I can say average sales. So it automatically tells me my average sales is 246.49. I'll call this my AVG sales. Click on save. And now you can see that the number is also shown here. And what is super cool is that everything is dynamic, which means that if I make a slicer for my order date, and if I choose a different period, you notice that the average transaction amount is also changing every time, right? Super handy. And of course, these are all preview features. So Microsoft is constantly adding and updating it. So maybe by the time you do this course, more features might have got added. But using the value is super handy. You can also click on review if you want to see the list of your own values that you have created. The next AI feature that we have is the simplest of the lot. I can click on the Q&A button, which is this one. And here we can say any question that we want to ask the system. So if I say, show me my sales, it shows me the total sales value. Now see, these 3 words are not really required. So you don't need to say, show me my sales. You can simply say sales and it automatically shows you the sale. But we recommend writing these words because it helps you construct a better sentence, how you would naturally speak to an analyst. And if I say, show me my sales by segment, then it breaks it into 3 segments. And if I say for India, see right now it is showing you 650, in fact 6.5 million. And if I say for India, then it shows me only 299,000, which is for India. And if I don't want to make it as a bar chart, I can say as, let's say, a tree map, and it will make a tree map for you like this. Super cool. What other type of questions can you ask? Quite a lot of them. I can say, who are my top 5 customer name, and it tells you who the top 5 customers are. You can even say, show sales by order year, by order quarter, and it makes a trend line for you. If you say as an area, then it makes an area. Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't make an area chart, but that's all right. We can say as. In fact, let's say by my segment. So it makes 3 different trend lines for you like this. And if you say except consumer, then it only compares the corporate and the home office segment. So there is no rule book to this. There is no guide that you can go through. You will have to practice this. There is a lot of hit and trial that goes into it. And at the same time, remember that Microsoft is constantly improving the features. So something that you might not have today might get added in the future. Personally, I have been working on this since March 2018, and it's amazing to see the number of improvements that they have brought into it in the last 3 years. There is also a preview feature that you can test out. So if we say, show me sales for most consistent customer name. In fact, let's just say consistent. Now you notice that it is just showing you all the customers because it doesn't know what consistent means. Or if I say something very simple, let's say best, it doesn't know what best means, so it's giving you a red underline. I can just click on this word and I can define what best means. A new window will open up, and here I can teach the Q&A. So I can say that best refers to customers who have sales of greater than, let's say, 7,000. As you can see, the feature is still in preview, so more features will get added with time. And there aren't a lot of customers whose sales is more than 7,000. So if I click on save and I close this, now we can ask the question best, and it understands what best means, and it is showing the transactions only for this. Very cool. And you can add any number of such words that you want. In fact, you can even add synonyms. For example, if you say show me revenue, it is showing you the profit, which is okay. If I say show me my top line, now you notice it doesn't understand what top line means. Now I know that top line refers to the sales, but how do we explain to Power BI that they refer to the same thing? So we go to the model button. Now remember, this topic will be covered in detail later, as in the modeling feature. But for now, let's just quickly see how we can add a synonym. So I will select my sales, just click on it. And in the properties view, you notice we have synonyms here, and I can simply put a comma and add, let's say, top line, right? And just confirm that top line has been added. And now when you come back, you notice that it is able to understand that top line is a synonym for sales. Excellent. So these are some AI features that I wanted to show you. So when you go to insert, we have Q&A, which we have done. I've done the decomposition tree in the last lecture. We have also done smart narrative. There is also something called key influencers, which is this one. Personally, I don't use it a lot and I find it very difficult to use. But if you feel that you want to have a look at it, please do. In all honesty, I would like to tell you that this is considered as a part of Power BI AI visuals, and a tutorial has been given on the website. But then I haven't really seen it being used too much by my clients, and I find it too difficult to operate on, and the impact is not a lot. So maybe just go and have a look and spend a few minutes and try and see if it helps you at all. All right, so that completes the lecture, everyone. In the next lecture, we will look at custom visuals. So we will look at visuals that are available in addition to the ones that have been inbuilt. Hi, everyone. So far, we have done a lot of inbuilt visuals. We have also seen the AI capabilities. Now let's look at custom visuals. Now, unfortunately, if you have not got a organization account, that means you can't create an account on Power BI, which in turn means that you can't sign in. And if you haven't signed in, then you can't go to more visuals. I would suggest try and get an organization account from somewhere. Maybe the one you have been given by the institute works if you're a student. And if you're working with an organization, no problem. You should be able to use that account. So I go to more visuals. And as you can see, there are hundreds of visuals available here. The visuals are similar to these are like applications that have been created. So just like you have it on iOS or Android devices, we have a store which is called the app source. And some of these have been made by Microsoft. Some of them have been made by other developers. Some of them have been made by individual developers, right? So the best part is that anybody on the internet with an idea can make their visuals and put it on the store. And as you can see, there are many, many of them. Let me start with at least one visual so you get a sense of how they work. The first one I want to search for is called the SANKEY. That would be SANKEY. We'll add it. Right? When you add it, it gets added here below the existing visuals. Let me add the others as well. So we will also add the tassel. Then we add the chord. And after that, we also add the force, which is the force directed graph. Now let's see how these four work. I have my SANKEY, and in this we can place our sales value and our segment and our category. So sales comes in my weight. Source label comes here. Let me just remove it once. And sales comes in weight. As you can see, it's a very nice visual. It allows you to see how the office supplies are being sort of sent into the different segments or being acquired by the different segments. We can also move it around to do a little bit of visual planning, right? Let me copy and paste this. And with the same data that we have, I'll convert this into a tassels. A tassel, as you can see, is very similar, right? It just visually looks a little different, right? You can move things around. Let me make one more. In fact, let me just decrease the size a little bit so you can see everything on the same page and also be able to compare all of them. All right. Then I have the chord. The chord is like a circle, which is probably a little too complex, even with only three levels in segment and category. I personally don't use it a lot. One reason is that the circle makes it difficult to read the numbers and it gets too cluttered. But then it's there, and if you feel it's helpful, definitely have a look. Something I use quite often is the force directed graph, which looks like this. And especially when you have multiple levels. So let's say I have my subcategory in the target, and let me just expand this. You can see how this looks. Now, some of you might feel, Havish, why would we ever want to use this? And it's a little hard to explain that. Let me just increase the size so you can see it clearly. Okay, much better, right? And there are many changes you can do. So I can, make some arrows. I can add the data labels if you want to. You can also change the thickness. You can add different colors as well, right? So I'm not really doing all of that. There are many options available in formatting. You will have to go through that. But there are cases where it's nicer to be able to see all these values visually like this rather than in the form of a table or a simple column chart. So spend some time, work on it with your own data and see if it helps you. Let's move on. Let us look at the box and whisker. So we have the box and whisker chart. There are two of them. You can select either one. Let me select the first one. In the box and whisker, we have, let's say, my segment and my category and my sales value. This is used for statistical analysis where you want to look at the mean, the median, the quartiles, and a few other values. Very handy, and as you can see, very simple to make in Power BI. Let's also look at the pulse, which is the pulse chart. Again, something I love to use. How the pulse chart works is that you start by putting your order date and sales, and at the moment it just looks like a regular column chart. But let me add a slicer at the bottom. But rather than choosing the slicer that we have been using so on, let's so far let's look at something different. I want to go to more visuals and select the timeline, which is the timeline slicer. The timeline slicer is an improvement to the basic slicer. And you can see that when I place the order date in it, I can see my data like this. So if I select the year, I can select any of the years. So let's select 2015. And you can see that this becomes only 2015 data. And why again are we making the pulse? What is so special about it, which we can't do in a trend line? We can make it dynamic. What that means is, let me just increase the size a little bit so all of you can see it clearly. I can select the pulse chart and I can select 15 and I can click on this play button and you notice it plays like this. Obviously, you can control the speed as well. And from a storytelling perspective, this is fantastic. For example, if you only want to show the data, let's say for the last quarter, or let's say the last 3 quarters, I can select it like this and I can click on the play button and then I can talk about the performance of the business for the last 3 quarters while being able to run the pulse at the back. After this, we have two dynamic visuals. So one is our donut, which is the advanced donut visual. Very simple to operate on. There are 3 levels that are supported. So I will have my segment, then my category below that, and then finally my subcategory. And then we want to look at the sales value. And as you can see, we get what looks like a donut chart, but this is an advanced donut. That means I can click on the consumer slice and it shows me all the 3 categories. And if I click on technology, it shows me the 4 subcategories. If we click in the center, then we're able to go back as well. Very beautiful looking, and I think every client would like to work on this. Then we have the animated bar chart race. So we have the animated bar chart race. I'm sure a lot of you would have seen this on LinkedIn. Even though what you find on LinkedIn is usually created on other applications like Python, but it's so cool that we can do it with zero coding knowledge in Power BI as well. So I have my sales and I have sales in value. And I will select my order date in my period. And let's also select the segment in the name. As you can see, it creates an animated bar chart race like this. Let's next look at the MEKKO, which I also like to use a lot. A lot of consulting firms like to use the MEKKO chart. And in the MEKKO, the idea is that it's very similar to a stat column, a 100% stat column. So I can place my category, sales, and I can also keep my profit and my order date. Right? Let me just place them in the right places. So category is in series. Yeah, that seems right. Let's see what is happening. In the x-axis, we have the 4 years, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I can see the contribution of each one of the three categories: furniture, office supplies, and technology. But we can also now look at the width of each of the column, that is the profit value. That means that 2012 is narrower because the profit is only 86. Here it is wider because it is 103, and so on. So it's a wonderful way of making a further addition to the stack column chart, which is to also change the width of the columns. And of course, if you click on the expand, then it shows you quarter-wise change as well, like this. Let's look at one final one, which is the bubble, which is the stacked bubble chart. Let's just select the first one, the bubble chart. And then in the bubble chart, as you can see, it's very simple to work on. I can place my category, my subcategory, as well as my sales value. And this is how we get the bubbles. Let me move it around a bit. So let's keep the bubble as the subcategory, and let's keep the category as the cluster, like this. And the sales can become the value, right? So each one of these three big circles is the three category, and then each category has different subcategories in it. All right, so that completes my demonstration of custom visuals. Obviously, there are many, many more that are available, and there are many fantastic ones. So you will have to spend some time and go through these. There is no shortcut. One help that I've given to you is the SQL BI visual reference. You can download it from the resources. And in this, about 100 visuals have been given. And this will help you a bit to try and understand what type of custom visual can be used for what type of business requirement. All right, in the next lecture, we are going to look at some more advanced visuals, so how we can create our own custom visuals, which is the Charticulator, and we will also look at the infographic design. Hi everyone. So far we have looked at the inbuilt visuals and the custom visuals that we can download. Let me go back to the app source, and there is something called the infographic designer. It has been created by Microsoft, and it is completely free of cost. And the idea of the infographic designer is that it allows you to create your own infographics. I will give you a small demonstration, even though this is a completely independent topic. So, I mean, I can cover 2 hours on this, but I'll give you one example, and then I'll take you to the internet and show you where you can read more about this and learn how to create your own visuals. The infographic designer is very different. Think of this like a pivot table in the form of a visualization. So I will start by putting my sales in the measure. So it shows me 12.64 million. If I put my category in the category and the segment in the legend, then it makes what looks like a regular column chart. Now, so far you must be wondering, but what is so special about it? I mean, it's the same, isn't it? The difference is that I can also place my segment in the column so that I get what is, remember we had done, if I can take you back to the example that I had covered, we had created these 4 blocks, which we had done by using small multiples. So that is sort of what we are using here. You can see here that we have, just a moment, that this is like small multiple. There are 3 blocks, and each of these is showing me one of the segments. Now I can also place the category in row, so it looks like this. This is almost like a pivot table where only the numbers are being shown. And if the segment is in category, then it looks like this. So it's a mix and match, you can play around with it. And there's nothing correct or incorrect. You can make whatever you want. But then what is the infographic element in it? To do that, you click on the edit button. And then remember, I'm just going to show you a quick example, but this topic is quite detailed. So you will have to go and learn it from the internet in much more depth. But for now, I'm going to add a shape, and I'm going to select, let's say, um, a dollar sign, and I will select shape 1 and we will delete it. Now you notice it doesn't look proper, so we can select multiple units and just see how beautiful this looks. Then we have the units per row. I can also change that to 5. This way I have, or maybe 2 would be better. So I have 2 per row. I'm not going to take you through in more detail, but I just wanted to show you how in under a minute we have managed to create such a beautiful infographic like this. Now let me take you to the internet and show you what all is available. So if you type Power BI infographic designer, there are some videos available on YouTube, obviously, not a lot, but enough for you to work with. And then you can also go to a web page. Let me see if I can find that. Just give me a moment. Okay, that's a little strange. So Power BI infographic designer documentation. Let's see if we're able to find something. Yeah, this is the page. So it's a very old article. It's on the Power BI community, and you can see they have explained how the infographic designer works, right? So you can look at, I mean, you can just Google it. Not a lot of people work on it, so don't expect to find a lot of information. But then, for example, there's a quick start PDF available like this that explains you how the infographic designer works. So maybe you can go through this. The other way of creating your own advanced visuals is called the Charticulator. Once again, I'll go back to visuals and I'll select the Charticulator. And this allows you to create your own visuals completely from scratch without any coding knowledge. Remember, this is still in preview. This was added only last month. And maybe by the time you work on it, some more features might have got added. If you look at the Charticulator, you can see an interface opens up. And I just open the tutorial to show you how it works. So there are video tutorials available. Most importantly, you can see that there are these beautiful, stunning visuals and you can customize them completely. For example, if I go to the radial bar chart, you can see there is a video which explains how you can simply drag and drop different elements. So it's almost like working on PowerPoint, and how you can create in just a few seconds your own visuals like this. So it's completely up to your creativity. You can create anything that you want. You can even export it as a template so you can share it with other people. And if you launch it, you can either create Charticulator visuals directly from Power BI, or you can do it on the website, which is charticulator.com. So this is just to inform you that this is there, but you will have to spend a lot of time learning how it works. But if this is something which you need, definitely look at it. Also remember that you can also use JavaScript to create custom visuals in Power BI, right? So there is a software development kit available, and you can use R, you can use jQuery, you can use D3.js, which are data-driven documents to create your own visuals, right? So you can see Power BI visual samples, right? So these are some things that have been created. These are mostly meant for very advanced users. So the software development kit is not something that probably you and I can start working with immediately. I also have a limited sense of understanding of JavaScript, but then this is usually created by IT teams. But if you have an IT team with you at the organization, you can tell them to start creating visuals that you want and you need. Excellent. So that completes this lecture as well. And with the completion of this lecture, we have covered inbuilt, custom, and advanced visuals. We have also done a lot of formatting. In the next lecture, we will look at working with tooltips, slicers, filters, bookmarks, and interactions. So there's a lot to be covered. Let me see you in the next lecture. Hi, everyone. So far we have seen visuals. Now let's see how visuals can interact with each other. I'm going to start by making a simple column chart with the order date and sales. Let me also put a border and a shadow. We'll copy and paste this, and in the chart below, we will remove the order date, replace it with the segment, and maybe also change it to a tree map. Two cards. The first card will have the sales, and the second card will just be a copy of the first one. So we'll copy and paste this, so we get two cards. And then finally, let me just move it to the right. And then finally, we have a slicer, which is for my order date. All right. Now, needless to say, everything is connected to each other. That means that when I move my slicer, you notice everything changes. But what if we do not want that to happen? So I can select my slicer, and then we can go to format and then select edit interactions. Now you would notice that in each of the visuals that we have, there are these two buttons that appear. So we have two buttons here, two here, two here, and two here. And everything is set to filter, here as well filter and filter. So for example, if we change the first chart that we created to none, I hope you can imagine what will happen when I move the slider. You notice that the cards are changing, but only the second visual is changing, the first one is not changing. Very cool, right? Similarly, on the second card, we can do the same thing and set it to none. This means, let me turn off edit interactions. When I move the slicer, only the first card changes, the second one always shows me the grand total, and the years never change, only the second visual is changing. The same logic is applied between the visuals as well. Right now, when I click on 15, the tree map changes. When I click on the tree map, the visual changes. But maybe I only want a one-way connection. That means when I click on the year, the tree map should change. But when I click on the tree map, the visual, which is the column chart, should not change. So we select the tree map, we go to format and edit interactions, and we can set it to three options that we have. Let's go through them. We are on the default, which is the center one, which is highlight. I'm sorry, we are on highlight, which means that it tells me the total sales for 15 is 4.2 million, out of which home office is contributing 865,000. So we can set it to filter. This means that every time I select on a different segment, it is not showing me the original value, it is just filtering for the value that we are selecting. And then finally, none obviously would mean that there is no impact. But remember, it will work the other way. So if I click on the year, the tree map changes. But if I click on the tree map, the year will not change, right? So it will take a little bit of time for you to set everything up because there are so many connections between every single element that you have on a page, but then it's definitely worth the effort. Let's move on. Now we want to look at filters. I'm going to make a table, and in the table, we will keep our customer name and the sales value. Now, obviously, it will show you a list of all the customers that you have. If you only want to see the top 15, you can open up the filter pane and then say that in customer name, I will want to select a top N filter. That means only the top 15 as per the sales value, and click on apply filter. This means that only the top 15 will be shown here. If you want to see the data only for India, but only for this visual, then you can put the country here, and then you can select India. But remember, at the moment, this country is only being applied on the current visual. It is not being applied on the page. If you want to apply it to the page, just move it to the page. Okay, I'm not sure if we can do that. So let me delete it and then put the country here. And I hope you can understand what we are doing. The difference is that now everything that is on the page will have an India filter applied to it. And as an extension of that, we have filter on all pages. That means if you put the country filter on all pages, then on every single page in your report, the country would only be for India. Okay. So we have filters on the current visual, filters on the page, and filters on all pages. Let's also see the type of slicers that we have. Now, so far we have only done one of them, which is the timeline slicer. So in slicer, we selected the order date and we get this. And there's nothing wrong with it, works perfectly. But there are many options here. So you can see that when let me just increase the size. There's a small drop down and I can select the type of the slicer. So it can be between, before, after. It can even be a list if I want to, like this, right? And I can also make it a drop down like this. And it can be relative date and relative time. So if I want to look at the current date, so I'm recording this on the 1st of June. And if you want to look at the last 6 months, you can do that, right? But what if you make a slicer with a text value, for example, with, let's say, the segment? When you're doing that, let me also add borders here so you can see them clearly. So a border and a shadow, format painter, and a border and a shadow. Perfect. Now you have the basic default slicer, which doesn't look bad, but then you can go to format and in the general option, you can change the orientation from vertical to horizontal so that it looks like buttons like this, right? And I feel it looks much nicer. Obviously, there are many other options available that you can go through. So if you look at selection controls, we have a single select, we have a select all option, right? You will have to spend some time going through these. But what if you have multiple levels? That means I have my segment below which we also have the category. So here you notice that it will automatically convert this into a hierarchy like this, right? So I can select consumer and then I can select only, let's say, technology like this. So that's how slicers work. Next, we want to look at bookmarks. For example, I have a chart with the order date and the sales amount like this. And I also want to create two buttons. So I will insert a blank button and let's make one more, right? Now we want to save two bookmarks. That means right now, if I go to view and I select my bookmarks, it says there are no bookmarks right now, which means I want to add it and I want to save it as I just rename it to my default. Then I want to click on the expand. I want to add a new one and I want to rename this to my quarters. Now, as I'm sure you can guess, when I click on default in view, it shows me this. When I click on quarters, it shows me this. Make sense? But then, of course, the end user is not going to open up bookmarks and click on these, right? It's not the best user experience. So we want to connect the two bookmarks with these two blank buttons that we have created. So in the first one, I will add some button text and let's just call this all. And then when we scroll down in the action, I will say that I want to select a bookmark and we already have a bookmark, which is default. And now you know what we do with the other one. Same thing, we select button text, we say quarter, and then we scroll down in action, we select bookmark and we can select quarters. Now, when you're working on Power BI desktop, you will have to press Control and click to activate them. But when this is published and you're sharing it with other people, they just have to click on the buttons. Let us look at the tooltips now. Now, I know some of you must be thinking, have you not already done the tooltips earlier? So if you remember from what we had done quite some time back, I told you that there is an option called tooltips. And if I want to put additional values like profit, now it will show me two things. It will show me sales and profit at the same time. But then what if you don't want to show this black box? What if you want to show something different? I can go to format and then select tooltip. And then you notice that I have different types here. So this is my default that we have selected. And I can also select other pages. Now, obviously, right now we don't have any other page that has been defined as a tooltip. So let's do that. I'll open a page. Let's call this my tooltip. The first change that I would like to make is to go to page format. And in page format, we go to page information and we change the tooltip activation to on, since we want the other pages to be able to accept this page. Then in the page size, we will change the size to the tooltip. The tooltip is the default, which is 320 by 240 pixels, but you can change it to any size that you want. So there is a custom option available and you can choose any height and width that you want. So let me select the tooltip. And you notice it's very small, but it's very difficult when we are working on this page if it's so small. So let's go to page view and select fit to page, right? What do we want to put on this tooltip? Anything we want. So in my case, I already have the years here, but we want to look at something different, maybe the months. So I will make a trend line, and in this we keep the order date and the sales value. We will click on the next level, so we will go to the month like this. Let me also expand it a little bit. And we don't really need this y-axis label. So in format, let me go to y-axis and let's see. Let me remove the title and let me also remove the y-axis completely. Perfect. So it looks like this. Let's go back and see how it looks. So when we go back, we have to connect this visual with the other tooltip that we have created. So we go to format, we scroll down and select tooltip, and then we select the other page, which is the my tooltip page. And as you can see, everybody, when you hover your mouse, it will show you the trend line only for that year. How cool is that? Now the rest, of course, is up to your imagination. You can add as many visuals as you want in the tooltip. You can customize the size. So if I search for tooltip in Power BI and we do an image search, you can see how much other people have done, right? I will show you something that I really like. So let me just scroll down and see if I can find it. Just a moment. That's strange. It usually should appear somewhere at the top. Just a moment. Okay, this one. So this website is called Discover EI, and if you look at the tooltip, just see the quality. This is fantastic, isn't it? Look at this. The quality of tooltips these guys are creating is extremely professional, and I mean, you would even think, have they really done this on Power BI, right? So please definitely have a look at this website, discoverei.com. Right. So everybody, we have done, let's just quickly go back and see what all we have done. We have done edit interactions. We have done filters. We have done slices. Then we have done actions, which are bookmarks. And then we've also done tooltips. Next, we will be starting with a new module entirely. And we will also be working on a problem statement. And we will be doing Power Query in the next module. And in the module after that, we will do DAX. Hi everyone, and welcome to a new module. This is where things get more difficult, but also this will get more practical. The purpose of Power BI is not just to make visuals, which we have been learning so far, but also to work on Power Query and DAX. Now I have separate courses available for Power Query and DAX. Let me quickly show them to you. So as you can see, there is a 3-hour course on DAX, and there is a 3-hour course on Power Query as well, which is this data wrangling in ETL using Power Query. If you remember what I told you when I was introducing Power BI, Power Query and DAX work on both Excel and Power BI. So whatever you're learning, you can use that knowledge in the other program as well. Now, since we have separate courses and these are each 3-hour courses, I would not be able to do it justice in this Power BI course. And this is an introduction to data visualization. So I will only be introducing Power Query, not getting into a lot of detail. If you want to do more advanced examples, I suggest that you go through the Power Query and the DAX courses as well. All right, let's look at what Power Query is. You can go through the documentation on powerquery.microsoft.com. In one line, it's an ETL tool, so allowing you to extract, transform, and load data. And it's a data prepping tool, which is very easy to operate on. So you can see it can connect to hundreds of data sources. It is very easy, has hundreds of transformations available in it. It also has some AI capabilities, and you don't need to learn any coding. Where does Power Query work? It works on Power BI desktop, it works on CDS, it works on Microsoft Excel, on the RPA tool Power Automate, and it also works on SQL Server. It also works on the cloud, just keep that in mind. And obviously it can connect to many, many different types of connectors. The language that Power Query uses is called M. And if I quickly take you through what are the advantages of Power Query, look at the limitations that Excel has. Finding data is difficult. Connecting to different data sources is difficult. Data is always scattered. There is no automation. There is a lot of data transformation. So you have to write a lot of formulas like VLOOKUP. And Excel cannot work with large files because everything is happening on the RAM, which means that if it's a very large data with about 5 lakh, 6 lakh values in it, the Excel file will stutter. These are issues that we have with Excel that Power Query can resolve for you. So remember, this is also available on Excel. In the Data tab, we have the Power Query editor. In Power BI, we can click on Transform Data to access Power BI. And we'll also be showing this to you later, which is how Power BI service works, which is the last module for this course, in which I show you how you can use Power BI data flows. This is how Power BI looks, Power Query looks on the Power BI service. And this is how the interface works on Power BI desktop and Excel. We'll do all of these things, but this will at least visually tell you what you can expect. All right. Now we are going to work on a problem statement. So rather than working on small examples, I'll be doing a complete project with you. And in this project, we will learn different elements in Power Query. So the problem statement is that we, as you can see, have data scattered across multiple files. In 2017-19 folder, you can see that there are 3 files given to you, 17, 18, 19. Then we have another file for 2020. Then we have category, discount, and ID and name. All of this you can download from the resources folder. In 2017-19, if I open one of these files, you will see that it has given us essentially, let me remove this. It has given us 10 columns, which is very similar to the data set we were working on earlier, but it's just a smaller data set with about 250 rows in it, right? And if I take you through the other files as well, 2018, the data is for a different year, but the same template, and same for 2019 as well. But if you look carefully, the problem is that we have the subcategory, but we do not know the category. Similarly, we have the customer ID, but we do not know the customer name, which is what we have to fix here. Now, where is this information given to you? You will notice that there are 2 separate Excel files. One is category, in which you can see that we have 17 subcategories and the 3 categories that these fall under. And similarly, you have a customer ID and name dimension table as well, where all the unique customer IDs and the names have been given to you. And then finally, we have discount, which shows us the discount being offered as per the combination of the subcategory and the segment. Right? So this is what we have to combine into a single Power BI dashboard. Let's start working. I'll open a new Power BI file. Let me save it first. So I'll save it on my desktop and let's call this PBI Power Query. All right, first thing that I want to do is to click on Get Data, go to More, and then select my folder. Once I connect that, I can select the folder path. So I'll just copy the path from here, come back and paste it here. So it should be sales data 1790. Also make sure that you have unzipped the file before you are working on it. If you have zipped, if it is zipped and you haven't unzipped it, Power Query will not work. I click on OK once again. And the first thing it does is to tell me that there are 3 files in that folder, which we want to combine and transform. Now that we have selected all the files, it is going to ask which sheet we want. And the sheet that we want is sheet number 1. And I click on OK. It will take about 5 seconds or maybe 10 seconds, depending on your system. And if you look, there is a new window that has opened called Power Query. This is called the Power Query Editor. Let's look at the interface. So we have apps just like Excel and Power BI. Then we have the steps that have been performed to combine the data. We have the formula bar. We have the view of the data where we can't edit, but we can see the data. And we also have some queries and some behind the scenes steps that have been given here. If you cannot see the formula bar, please go to view and enable the formula bar from here. If you want to see the entire code behind it, I call it a code even though it's not programming. It is more of a functional language. You can click on Advanced Editor and this will show you all the steps that have been performed to combine the 3 years of sales into a single file. But how can we even say with confidence that the 3 years have been combined? Do you see that a new column has been created called source.name? If I open it, you see that 17, 18, 19 very neatly has been combined together. How does this happen? If you go through the steps on the right side, you can see that step by step, it first took the folder, it took all the files, it removed all the hidden files, then it added a column called transform file, which had all the content from the Excel. It renamed the column so that I call it source.name. Then I want to remove everything else, all the metadata, since we only need the file name and the content, and then I expand it. And after expanding it, I also change the data type so that this is text, this is date, and these are numbers. Now, if you want to study all of this in more detail, I suggest you go through my Power Query course. Excellent. Now that we have this, we click on Close and Apply. And you can see that the 3 files from the folder have been combined into a single file, or rather a single data set. And if you look on the right side, it says 2017-19. Right? I'll also rename it. So let me just rename it and let's call this fact. Since it's a fact table, and let's call it fact sales. And if I make a card and keep my sales in it, it says 384,000. But if we go back to the folder and I select 2020 and I put it back in the same folder as 17, 18, 19, I can simply click on refresh and you can see that the number will change automatically. How cool is that? This means that any change that is happening, adding a row, subtracting a row, modifying something, adding a new file, subtracting, removing a file, everything will get updated with the refresh button. If you want to change the data source settings, you can just click on transform data and data source settings. And this allows you to keep everything intact, the visuals and the Power Query steps, but it allows you to change the source. If you want to open Power Query, you can click on transform data and this will open Power Query for you like this. Wonderful. Now the next thing we need is the customer name. So let's click on Excel and we want to select the file called ID and name. Open. This time we are selecting a single Excel file. So we select the sheet, which is ID and name, and we click on load. All right, now just give me a moment. Okay, now if you notice, ID and name is essentially a different query. It is not a part of the sales query, and that's why these are not connected to each other. And that is why you have to go to transform data and we have to do a VLOOKUP. That's what you would do, right, when you're working on Excel. But we don't have VLOOKUP in Power Query. We have something even better, which is called merge query. Also change the name to dim_ID. So we have fact sales and dim ID. Now we go to the sales query, we select it, and then we go to merge queries. And here we will select the other table, which is dim ID, and we just have to select the two columns. So we select customer ID and customer ID. And you can see that there are many types of joins available. So we have left outer, right outer, full outer, inner, left anti, and right anti, which is what also you get in SQL or any relational database like Microsoft Access. But we want to select left outer, which is just like VLOOKUP, and we click on OK. And the entire table has been merged. We click on the expand button in the top right corner. And since we already have the customer ID, we only need the name. I will only select the name. Let's also double click and call this the customer name. Let's also drag it to the left so that the customer name comes next to my customer ID, which is here. Perfect. Now we have to do the merge one more time. So let me close and apply. We will click on Excel once again. Go to the category. We select the sheet. But this time you notice that there are two issues. Number one, these null values obviously have to be filled. And also the column heading is not getting picked up properly. So even though we do have a heading with us, which is category and subcategory, for some reason, Power Query is not able to determine what the heading is. So we don't want to load it. We will directly click on transform data so that we go to the Power Query interface. Once we come to Power Query, like we did earlier, first thing is to rename it to dim_ the category. First have to clean up this query before doing a merge. So we will click on use first row as headers, and the headers are taken from the first row like this. After that, you right click on the first column, then select fill and then fill down. This way, all the blanks are filled. So we are happy with the final output. Go back to sales, go to merge. Now we already know how to do this. We have done it earlier. Select the category and we select our subcategory, which is here, and we select the subcategory, which is here. Click on OK. Click on the expand button. Since we already have the subcategory, we only need the category. And you notice we get the category as well. Let me drag it to the left. And now when we click on close and apply, you can see that even though we have three queries with us, we only need one query because my fact sales, let me minimize everything. My fact sales has everything in it. It includes my customer name as well, and it also includes my category as well, right? And everything is fully automated. So if anything changes in any one of these 6 files, 4 years and ID and name. You just have to click on refresh. That's all. One final time, we also need to get the discount. So I'll click on Excel, select my discount, and we will select the sheet and click on transform. When Power Query opens up, even though at first glance it might seem that everything is correct, you notice that the header is not coming correctly. Also, this is not in a tabular format. So we will click on first row as headers, and then we will also right click on the first column and then say unpivot other columns. And why are we doing this? Since the data is already unpivoted, or rather the data is already pivoted, we have to unpivot it. We have to reverse the process. So I'll click on the first column and then say unpivot other columns, and we get a tabular layout, which is what we wanted. This is my category, and this becomes my percentage discount. Let's go back to sales. First, let's also rename it. So dim underscore discount. Let's go back to sales. Here we will do merge, but this time we cannot merge the two tables using a single column as the reference. And that is why when I'm merging it, I'll have to select two columns. That means we will have to select our category, press Control, and then click on. I'm sorry, this was my business segment. I made a small mistake. So let's quickly go back. And this is not my category. This should be my business segment. Please make sure to make this change. All right, let's come back to sales, come to merge. We select dim discount. So first we will click on segment, press Control and click on subcategory. And you can see that two numbers come here. So that is the order in which you selected them. Segment and then subcategory. Here as well, segment, press Control, click on subcategory. This is how you do a multi-column lookup or a merge. Click on OK. Just like earlier it gets merged, we only need the discount percentage. And as you can see, we have the discount percentage as well. Right? So this is how we have managed to combine everything. We have managed to combine, if you remember, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 years of data plus 3 dimension files, and these 7 files have been combined into a single model that we have created on Power BI. There is a little more I want to show you in Power Query, which we will do in the next lecture, in which I show you how to do some data cleaning, and I also show you how to write your own formulas. Hi everyone. In the last lecture, we saw how Power Query can be used to combine multiple files and also do merge. Keep in mind that in real life, the examples would not be that simple because it is not necessary that the same template is there in each file. Maybe the column order is different. Maybe there are spelling mistakes. Maybe the sheet name is different. So whenever you have these non-uniformities, can Power Query handle it? Yes. The short answer is yes, it can be done, but then you have to learn a little bit of M language and then learn some more advanced operations. All of this is covered in my Power Query course. In this lecture, I want to go back to Power Query and just take you through a few additional options, just to give you a sense of how formulas and functions work in it. The first thing I want to show you in my ID is how the name, which currently is surname, comma, first name, can be changed to become first name and then the surname. In Excel, you would think of using substitute, left, right, find, but then it's not a 10-second solution, right? You still have to write the formula and then it takes some time to do that. In Power Query, we can go to add column and then select column from examples, the very first one. As you can see, even the shortcut is exactly the same, what we have in Flashfill, Control E. Now, when I say Darren, you will see that it is automatically picking all the first names and it is also writing the function called text.after delimiter. Remember, this is a Power Query function. It is not available on Excel. If I write Darren space parse it doesn't work. It asks me to enter some more sample values. So let me do that. I'm giving one more sample value, fill in our over. And now you can see it works perfectly. It is automatically creating this nice large formula for me. I click on OK, get the result. Let me remove the name column and let's rename this to the name. And if you look at the formula by clicking on the gear icon on the right side, you can see that this is the formula that was written automatically. How cool is that? And let me also show you, let me also refresh this so that the names come properly. Okay, so you can see that we have the sales and the discount, but we want to get the net sales, which is sales multiplied by discount percentage. To do this, we will go to add column and then select custom column. And here I can say that my net sales is equal to what? It is equal to my sales multiplied by 1 minus discount percentage, like this. Click on OK and you get the result like this, which is great. But what if you want to do some custom function? I mean, not write a formula, but use a function. So there are many functions available in Power Query. You can go through the official documentation. In fact, let me also at the same time show you Power Query M formula reference. So you can see that we have the official page where I can look at the M function reference, and there are different categories, and each category has many functions in it, much more than what you have on Excel. So let's say the problem is we want to get the, just a moment. All right. So we want to say that if the net sales, which right now is ranging from 3, and if I sort it in descending, it gives me 5,101. Okay. Let me also cancel this last step, sorted rows. So we know that the values are from, let's say, 0 to 6,000, correct? We want to make 3 categories. So from 0 to 2, 2 to 4, and 4 to 6. We can go to conditional column on the top left. This is like an if statement, and we can see that the net sales category is that if the net sales is less than 2,000, then the output should be A. Let's add one more. So we say net sales is less than 4,000. It should be B. In fact, let's make it 2001 and 4001 to include 2000 and 4000 in A and B. And otherwise, we can say it should be C. As you would expect, you get the result like this. As you can see, we have all the 3 results available. And if you look at the formula, even though the syntax is very different to how we do it on Excel, it makes sense. We say each if net sales is less than 2001, then it is A. Else if net sales is less than 4001, then it is B, else C. So there is some similarity to how we do it on Excel, and there is some similarity to programming languages as well. It's like a mashup of both things. But what if you really want to create your own formula by writing the function? For this, we click on custom column once again, and I will say something, So maybe I want to create a target, right? And I want to multiply my sales by 1.1. This is all right. This is just an arithmetic operator. But what if you need to write functions here, right? For example, let's say we have let me just think of a good problem. All right, so we have the customer name, but for some reason we just want to get the first 3 letters of the first name. Let's see how we do this. I will go to custom column and we will say customer name, first three characters only. Now in Excel, we know that we have left, and it's very simple. We can write left and then select the number of characters, but we don't have left here. So we have to write text, and as you can see, we do have IntelliSense. So the moment you start writing the function, it does show you the other options as well. All the different, after the dot notation, you see a list of all the functions that have text in it. So I can say text dot start, right? So we can also write start, and we can see we have text dot start like this. The arguments are select the text. So the column is customer name, comma. How many characters do we want? We want 3 characters. And this is how you can use functions as well inside Power Query. Of course, there are many, many other things. We can do API calls. We can create our own custom functions as well. We can create parameters. Then we have some AI features available as well. There are more than 700 types of data transformations. We can also use R and Python scripting. So definitely go through the Power Query course if you feel this is an area which will be important to you going forward. In the next module, we are going to start with a new topic, and we will look at DAX, Data Analysis Expressions. Make sure that before you close this file to click on close and apply, so that all the work that you have done is saved. And we are going to complete this topic and move to the next topic, but we will continue to work on the same file that we have. So this PBI Power Query file will be used going forward as well. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new module. So far we have done visualizations, we have also done Power Query. Now let's look at DAX. Data Analysis Expressions is a language very similar to Excel, and it is created specifically for handling data models, but just like Excel, it has formulas and expressions in it. It works on Power BI, SQL Server Analysis Services, as well as Excel by using Power Pivot. And the engine it uses is the same, called the tabular engine. You can go through the documentation here on this link. So you can see that you have an overview of DAX, you have a glossary, then you have videos, you have functions that have been explained, right? So everything has been very nicely given here. The only challenge is that there is a lot of information, so you'll have to spend some time and effort to go through all of this. I also recommend going to another website called SQL BI, which is by far the best reference for DAX. The two people who run SQL BI, Alberto Ferrari and Marco Russo, they are considered the gods of DAX and have been working on it for a really long time. And you should definitely check out their website. Then we have another website called Kerbal, and Ruth, who runs Kerbal, also has a glossary available on the website. So let me quickly show them to you. So one is we have dax.guide, where we have, as you can see, a list of all the functions with an explanation. And then we also have Kerbal, where also you have a glossary plus some videos as well. If you want to practice DAX online, there is something called dax.do. This is a part of SQL BI itself. So dax.do allows you to practice DAX online, even though the way you write the DAX code here is a little different. But then, it's a great way of learning, and you can also go through the video, and there are some free tutorials available that tell you how to work with it. So just to give you a small example, I have an inbuilt table here called sales. And if I select, let's say I select my customer table, and I select my company name, and we click on the 3 dots and say preview data, you notice that it automatically writes a DAX expression, which is top in 10 distinct customer name. And if I change the top to 3 and click on run, you can see that it gives me the result like this. So I'm sure you're able to understand how DAX query works. Even though when we are working on Power BI, we don't use the evaluate there. We just have to write top in like this. Of course, there's a lot of similarity between Excel and DAX. So the functions look similar. A lot of them are very similar to each other. DAX also has lookup functions similar to Excel, which work both with array and vectors. Now let's look at the differences. Now data types are different in DAX. Obviously, they cannot be interchangeably used. Excel functions can use dollar signs. You can select a specific cell or a range of cells, while DAX will only select an entire column. Date and time functions in Excel return an integer. DAX works a little differently because it's a date time data type, which is not there in Excel. And Excel has no functions that return a table, even though now with dynamic arrays, some functions can do that, but DAX, of course, can do that right from the beginning. And DAX lookup functions require a relationship. And in Excel, we don't usually use relationships. For example, when we're working on VLOOKUP, we simply write VLOOKUP and select the other table. All right, now let's get started. So I'll come back to the same file where we left off last time, which is Power BI work query, and I'll save it. And I want to reopen it because now I'm going to call this Power Query plus DAX so that both the topics are covered in the same example. And let me reopen this. All right, now let's understand why we need to do it before we see how it is done. Let us say I have the order date and the sales like this, and I have expanded it to the quarters. I know that from Q1 to Q2, there was a growth from 8,600 to 13,000. But then how do you know what is that exact change that has happened? How do you calculate it? In Excel, it's possible. You can always do A2 minus A1, or if you want to find the percentage change, A2 minus A1 divided by A1. So current quarter minus previous quarter divided by the previous quarter. But in DAX, you can't really do that because where do you write the formula? Plus, the formula cannot be written on a cell by cell basis. The formula will have to be written for the entire column. Now, this is the type of challenge that we have for which we need to use DAX, right? So far, when we were only creating visuals and preparing the data, we don't really need DAX. But the moment you have more advanced requirements, then DAX is super important because DAX is how you write functions in a data model. All right. First, let me explain to you the difference between a calculated column and a measure. So in the data view, which we have not used up till now, okay. So in the data view, which we have not used up till now, in table tools, there are 4 options. We have new measure, quick measure, new column, and new table. For now, we want to go to the sales table. And you can see we have the net sales here, and we also have I have my sales and I have my quantity here, correct? What we want to find is sales into quantity. So I want to find the total sales that has happened, right? So assuming here that sales means that it's the sales per unit and 2 is the number of units I've sold, I want to find the total sales, total net sales. To do this, I will go to table tools and create a new column. The formula bar will appear. We have to give it a name, so I'll call it total net sales, which is equal to what? Very simple, it is equal to sales. Now the moment you type SAL, you notice I can select the sales column multiplied by the quantity column. When you press enter, as you expect, a new column is created multiplying 17.4 into 2, 34.8. Let me go back to the report view and create a card. In this card, we will select the total net sales in field, and I will use the drop down to change it into the average. Now this means that on an average, it is 1.88, so 1,800. Let me also go to the formatting, and in the category, in the data label, let's set the display unit to none so that it tells me 1880, 0 decimals. Perfect. Now this was one way of finding out the average of total net sales. So it tells me on an average for each transaction, 1880 is the value. Another way to do this is to create a measure. Now see, even in the calculated column, we used what? We used a DAX expression, but here we are using a single DAX expression. So we click on new measure and we will call this same thing, total net sales, but I'll call this a measure so we can differentiate between both of them. To go to the next line, you can press Shift Enter, and here we will say what we want to find is the average X. The average X means it's a average which will be over a set of expressions evaluated over a table. What that means is that once I select my table, the expression can be what we did earlier, which is my sales multiplied by my quantity. Now, you must be wondering, but Havish, where is the column being created? It's a virtual column. So the column is being created inside the formula itself. So when we press enter, and let me copy this card and remove the total net sales, and I keep this one, the total net sales measure, you notice we get the same result. Also pay attention to the icon that we have. Here there is a calculator symbol, that means it's a measure. And here you have this table with a sigma, which means it's a calculated column. That's the difference. Right? So in the beginning, yes, these topics seem a little difficult, wrap your head around it. But then if you want to create formulas and make more advanced reports, then you have to use DAX. Keep in mind, I have an entirely different course on DAX, just like I have one on Power Query. It's a 3-hour course covering all these topics in a lot of detail. So if this is something you want to pursue in and spend more time on it, make sure to go through the DAX course as well. But let's do another example. In fact, let's go back to the one that I showed you earlier. As you can see, I have my order date and I have my sales value, and we want to find the change happening from one to the other, right? So before we go to the change, before we go to finding the change from quarter to quarter, quickly showing you, recapping the topics. So what we did was we found out the average total sales. So we clicked on new column, and then we also were able to do it using a measure. There is a article which also explains the difference between calculated columns and measures. It's on SQL BI. You can just Google it. All right. Now, the next thing we want is to create what we call a date table. And this is super, super, super important. Why do we need it? It is explained on Microsoft's documentation. But to put it simply, if you want to create time intelligence functions, then you need to have a date table. And there are certain conditions that have to be met. Unique values, blanks, no missing dates. It must have a full year, and so on. I'll not get into details here. Let me show you practically how we do this. We go to the data view, and I want to click on new table. We'll call this my date table. And what is it? It is nothing but calendar min of my order date all the way up till the max of my order date. Press enter, and as you can see, it creates a date table for me, meeting all the conditions that we have to fulfill. Let me also select the column and change it to a date, since we don't need the time value. And now everybody, you have to create a connection between the date table and the fact sales. So we click on the modeling button. Now it is possible that some of these relationships were automatically created. It might be there or it might not be there. If it is there, don't worry. And if it is not there, also don't worry. I'll explain how these things work. Let me first just clean up everything a little bit. And if you do see the relationships, please delete them. Right click and delete. And right click and delete. All right. Now, first things first, we need to connect my order date to my date. So I will select my order date. Just click, hold it, and drag it on top of the date. And this creates a one-to-many relationship. Now, the same way, we can also have a relationship between my category, between my subcategory and my subcategory. like this. And I can also have a relationship between my, oh yeah, that's it. So that's the relationship between this, and in the customer, I can have customer ID and customer ID. Just a moment. There seems to be something wrong. So it says that my dim ID has some issue. Let me quickly go to Power Query and see if there's any problem. Okay, so we have CID and we have the name. All right, but that should work. So I have my CID and I have my name. Okay, let's see what it says. So it says that my dim ID has some null values in it. That's very strange. Let me try to refresh it. All right. And it still doesn't work. I wonder why. Let's go back to transform data and check this. So this is a list of unique customer IDs, right? How do we check that? Just to be on the safer side, we can see that there are 793 unique values here. So I'm going to select the column and say remove duplicates. Oh, all right, got it. So what is happening here is that we have some customer IDs that are being assigned to multiple people. That's why the relationship could not be kept. But I hope you were able to see how important it is to learn these advanced topics, because otherwise you would have kept on wondering, why is it that we are not able to get the correct result, right? So as you can see, we have the CIDs here and we have the name here. Let me also go to sales, and in my customer ID, let's see how many unique IDs we have here. We have 492. Perfect. So let me cancel this last step and then come back to this one, right? And now since we have removed all the duplicates, we can go back to my, let me refresh it and go back to my relationship, and hopefully it should work now. Let's see. And it still doesn't work. This means that there is still a possibility that an ID is being repeated, which is very odd because we just removed all the duplicates. But nevertheless, let's go and check once again. So we want to go to CID and remove duplicates. All right. So if you have removed the duplicates here and we have the customer ID here, that means that it should be working properly. All right, let's refresh it and check once again. And it still doesn't work. Can we make it a many-to-one relationship? And it says it's not a valid relationship. Now, this usually happens when it says it's not a valid relationship, where there's maybe a null value or an error of some sort. Let's check that. So if you look at the number of rows, it's 493. And in sales, when we remove the duplicates, it tells us 492. Got it. So let me delete the last step. So I know what the problem is. There must be a null value here. Got it. So we have to remove this null. Click on OK. Close and apply. And now we should be able to create a relationship between customer ID and CID. Perfect. Please go through the last maybe 5-7 minutes if you did not catch it the first time. So if something you did not understand, or if you left out on one of the steps, please make sure to rewind the lecture and make sure to do this correctly. All right. Now the point is that now these relationships that we are creating is explained in much more detail in the DAX course. The idea of this Power BI introductory course is not to give you too many advanced topics. As you can see, there are many issues that will crop up. And when you're working with Power Query and DAX, do not expect that errors will not happen. Like even in my case, even though my data was clean, in spite of that, there were some issues that came up. Imagine what would happen with your own data sets, right? But on that note, Are you wondering what this relationship is even doing? See, when I'm using the relationship, for example, subcategory and customer ID, why are we doing the merge? And this is a question that a lot of people have. So if you go online and you say merge versus relationship, you will see that many people have this query where they say, what should we do when we want to combine multiple files? Should we create a merge or should we create a relationship? There is no easy answer to this. Different people have their own opinions on it. So the more you read, the better you will understand in what case relationships are better, in what case merge is better. Excellent. But the most important thing here, everybody, was to connect my order date to my date, right? Please make sure you have done that correctly. Immediately you will notice that your visual is not working. And the reason is that you're using the order date, the original one. But the order date cannot be used now since you have connected it to a proper date table. This means in my date table, we have the date. So I will remove the order date and replace that with the date. As you can see, works perfectly. So I'm using sales from my fact sales and I'm using date from my date table. Now let's see how we can write a DAX measure. I will click on new measure and we will say the quarter over quarter change. What is it equal to? First, I will create a variable called prev qtr and say that the prev qtr is equal to calculate the sum of my sales. And what is the filter? I'm using a function called date add that will move the given set of dates by a specified interval. So I want to move my date from the date table by 1 month, or sorry, 1 quarter. And once this prev quarter is calculated, then I can return the result and say that, all right, now we want to divide. In the numerator, we will have the sales for the current quarter minus the sales for the previous quarter divided by the previous quarter. Press enter. I will also select this measure, QOQ change, and change it to a percentage. And when we drag it to the tooltip, look what happens. Q1 obviously only shows you the sales since it's the base. I'm sorry, Q1, which is the base quarter, shows you 8630. But Q2 will tell you that there was a 56% increase that happened and a 91% increase that happened. How cool is that? So you're able to present so much information with simply writing a single formula like this. Like this, there are many other formulas available. There are also quick measures which allow you to be able to use some inbuilt formulas like YTD, QTD, MTD. I'm not covering all of this. It's much more detailed. And this is all covered in the DAX course. But I hope you get a sense of three things. Number one, how we created a calculated column, which was total net sales. How we created a new table, which was the date table. And finally, how we created a measure like this. Measures are a very detailed topic. It's also a very complex topic. People have been spending years and years working on it. So do not attempt to learn everything quickly. Take your time, be very patient. For example, I've been working on it for 3 years and I have just barely scratched the surface. And also, as we are closing the topic of DAX and Power Query, keep in mind that they are not a replacement for each other. There are certain areas of overlap where it's a choice what you want to use. But then Power Query is a data prepping tool, which is for ETL, while DAX is for creating formulas and calculations. And both of these should be a part of your arsenal if you want to become a good Power BI user. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last module. For this example, I would like you to open the first Power BI file on which we were working, where we created all the different visualizations. And what we want to do now is to publish our Power BI file to Power BI service. Now keep in mind, that this will only work if you have signed in, and for signing in, you need to have an organization account, like I mentioned in the first lecture. So assuming that you have signed in, you will have to click on publish. If you're working with an organization, there is a possibility that different workspaces have been created for you, but the default root is called my workspace. As you can see, I have already created multiple workspaces here, and I want to push this report in the workspace called trainings. Click on select. What happens now is that the entire Power BI report is being uploaded to Power BI service, and you can click on this link to open it. The website is app.powerbi.com, and you can see that every single visual, every single dashboard that we have created with full dynamic elements is available on the cloud. Now let's look at the number of options that we have available. You can see all the pages on the left side. You can also minimize this and hide the navigation pane as well. If you're presenting this to somebody, then on the top right corner, there is an option to go full screen, which is very similar to a slideshow mode. And then you have the navigation buttons at the bottom. You also have the option to change it to high contrast colors. For example, high contrast 1. In fact, yeah. So high contrast 1 is like this. And then we also have a high contrast black and a high contrast white. Why would you want to use it? There are certain cases where you just want to focus on the numbers and not in the colors, where this might be handy. Let me change it back to none. From here, you can also save a copy of the Power BI file. Since the entire Power BI file was uploaded in the first go, you can export it as a PowerPoint and as a PDF and analyze in Excel. I will show all the three to you. PowerPoint is just a PowerPoint. Remember, there will be no dynamic elements. Everything will be static. It will just be a PowerPoint with screenshots for each page. PDF is again just a PDF. Analyze in Excel is interesting. So when I click on Analyze in Excel, it will take a little bit of time and it creates the Excel file. And if I open this, you can see that this file that I have opened is just a pivot table. And on the right side, you can see that the model is created and I can see all the fields have been given here. There are a lot of small things that you have to keep in mind. For example, you will notice that if I try to put sales in values, it will not allow me. It will say that the field I'm trying to place in values is not a number. But we know that sales is a number, so why are we not able to do that? Because we have to create sales into a measure using DAX before we can use it inside Excel. It sounds a little complicated, but the process is that in Power BI, every single numerical column that you have, for example, here what do we have? Here we have sales, profit, quantity, correct? Now the sales is a number, but if I want to reuse it in Excel, I'll have to create a measure from this. Let me show you how we do that. I'm going to close this file that I downloaded. In my Power BI, on my Power BI desktop, I want to create a measure for sales. So on Home, New Measure, we can create a measure called Sales Measure, which is equal to nothing but the sum of table 1 sales value. Save the BI file, go back to Home and publish it once again. I'll save it back in trainings. Now, since there is already a report called PBI overview, it will ask me if I want to replace it. We do want to do that, so I'll replace it. Once it is uploaded, and it is published. We will click on open. Of course, it is the same report. There is no difference. But if we go to analyze in Excel and download it once again, this time you would notice that the pivot table that is created, do you see this? There is a sales measure, and I can put the sales measure in values, the country here, and we get the result. So once again, keep in mind, you cannot use any numerical columns. If you have taken the data to Power BI and then you re-download it as an Excel, you will have to create a measure. Does that mean that if you have 15 numerical columns, you have to do it with every single one? Absolutely. Seems like a lot of hassle, but then it has to be done. So if we go to pivot table analyze and we look at the data source, this is not a pivot that was created from an Excel directly, correct? So when we go to connection properties, you can see that the connection name has been given here. The same thing, if you go to data and you click on queries and connections, again you can see the connection can be viewed here. And we can go to properties from here as well. There is also an option in pivot table analyze to go to your OLAP tools and select convert to formulas. It's a little difficult to explain what it is, but for those of you who are in IT and who are working as a data analyst, we're essentially creating cubes here. So if you look at the formula that has been created, it says that this is the link that we have. And what measure are we looking at? We're looking at the sales measure. And then how is the value coming? The value is coming from A2 and B1. A2 being the country and B1 being the measure that we want, which in this case is the sales measure. For 99% of you, this is probably something you will never need to work on, but it's good to know that we have the ability to do this. This is for more advanced users. Let's come back to OBS service. So we have done file from where we can download it, we can print it. We also have an option to embed it, which means that if you want to make the report public, you can publish it to the web. But before I show you this, let me talk about sharing. Now, sharing means that you can share a link with people who you have given access to, like you do it on Google Sheets. But to be able to share, you need to have a pro account, and the recipient also needs to have a pro account. What that means is, you can see that I have a pro account right now. That is why I can share. And if you want to receive it, you also need to have a pro account. But what if you don't have the pro account? You do have an organization account, you have published it, but you want to share it with others. Keep in mind that if you do this option, embed, your data will become public. So anybody on the internet can access it. But this is public data, so let me show you how it works. So I will select publish to web. It gives me a warning telling me that it is going to become public. Once again, it tells me anybody on the internet with the link can access it. Let me click on publish once again. As you can see, I have an iframe which I can put on a website, and I also have a link which I can just copy. And if I open a new window, I can just paste the link there. And as you can see, the entire report works beautifully. So you don't have to install anything, and you can share it with anybody, even with Mac users. In fact, if I show you my website, havishanconsulting.com, and dashboard samples, you will see that there are a few reports that I've created here, and all these reports have been done in the same way. These are all embedded on my website. Okay, as you can see here. And how did we do that? We went to file, then we went to embed, publish to web, and we simply copied this and we put it on the website. Okay, of course, there is an integration with Teams as well that you can do. So when you're working on Microsoft Teams, all right, let's just wait for Teams to open. Okay, that's strange. Let me restart. and select my other ID. This one should work. Okay, so when you're working on Teams, you can click on the three dots and just a moment, click on the three dots and you can see that there are lots of apps available. So I will download the one called Power BI, and this is beautiful because I have my entire Power BI interface that will work from inside Microsoft Teams. Right? It's fantastic. Then there is some comment and subscribe. I'll not get into details here. We can also edit the report, which means that if I click on edit, the entire editing interface appears. So I can select visuals, import new visuals. What I can't do is to create measures. If you want to create new measures, that will have to be done on Power BI desktop. Okay, let me save it and go back to workspaces. As you can see, I have different workspaces here. I select trainings, and this one I can delete. We don't need this, so that there's no confusion, right? So what we've done is gone to workspace, selecting the workspace that you want, and you can see that the Power BI file has been uploaded in two different ways. One is a report, the other is the dataset. From here, you can also look at some settings. So if you want to change the name, if you want to add some more people, like that. There are many options here, but these are mostly for the IT guys to handle. As the creator of the report, most likely you will not have to bother with this. You can also download the PBI from here as well. Now there is something new here, which is called, if I select my data, called Get Quick Insights. What this means is that when I click on it, it takes a few seconds. So while this runs in the background, let me tell you what it is doing. It is looking at your raw data set and it is trying to derive insights from it. So I click on View Insights, and you can see that automatically AI is being used to give you different insights. For example, tables has noticeably less profit. It tells me that medium and high order priority has noticeably higher sales. How cool is that? Now let's say I like this, but I want to explore this further. So I'll click on this, and then on the right side at the top, we have Get Insights. So I can look at related insights. So I can look at customer name wise tables. I can look at some other ways of presenting the same type of data. Let me close this. Now let us say that we like this visual and I would like to use it. So I can click on Pin Visual, and it will ask me if I want to create a new dashboard, which I do. So I'm going to type BI dash. And if I go to the dashboard, you can see that it has created a dashboard. And where do we find the dashboard? In workspaces, in trainings, you will notice that we have a dashboard, which is PBI dash. We have a report, which is PBI overview, and we have a workbook. I'm sorry, we don't have a workbook, but we have a data set, which is PBI overview, like this. All right. So these three are different entities, which are what we call the building blocks, and each three work differently. So if I click on the dashboard, this is one tile, okay? So this tile will always be in the shape of a rectangle, but I can even ask other questions. So I can use Q&A to say that, show me my sales by state for India as a map. So we get the result. I will pin this on an existing dashboard, which is PBI dash. And as you can see, it gives us another tile right now. which is very cool. And of course, you can move around these tires and change the dimensions a little bit. But this is how you would present the data now. Now, a lot of people get confused. They say, why are there two ways of presenting the data? We have a dashboard and we have the report. See, the main report is supposed to be, so this main report is supposed to be what you create on Power BI desktop, which has much more information in it. The dashboard is meant for different stakeholders because you should be able to create multiple dashboards for different needs. If I go back to my Power BI report, and let's say there is a visual that I have, maybe this one. Let me click on edit. And you notice there is a pin button here as well. So I can pin this to the same dashboard. And look how cool it is. How did the first two visuals come? This came directly from the report, from the data set that we had by asking a question. And where did this one come from? This one came from directly pinning from the report that we had created on Power BI desktop. So you can mix and match these things. And of course, you can download it, save it, just like you did with the normal Power BI report that you had. Let's go back to my workspace. And here you can also change the view to the lineage view, where you can see how these building blocks are connected to each other. So Global Superstore is the data set. PBI overview is the report we created. The PBI overview is the report that we created. Then we uploaded it on Power BI service, and finally we created the dashboard as well, like this. Let's go back to the list. There are several things that I'm not talking about. For example, goals and applications and all. The Power BI service in itself is a very wide area. You will have to Google it. So you can simply type Power BI service, and in the documentation, it will tell you what all Power BI service contains. And there's obviously a comparison between what Power BI service has and what Power BI desktop has. There would be some difference between them. Some commonality, but some differences as well. All right. Next thing that we can do is let me come back to the service. Click on the three dots and download something called the data gateway. The data gateway essentially is a connector which connects your local on-premise system with Power BI service. And why do you need it? If you want to set up automatic refresh. That means that I have my Power BI overview now on the report. I'll click on it. I'm sorry, let me go back. So let me go back to my workspace, trainings, and let me show you. Just a moment, let me click on settings. Settings gives me this. So what we want to do is to go to the settings for the data set. And here in settings, you will see that we have something called the gateway connection as well as scheduled refresh. Now for the gateway connection to work, you will have to first download the small connector called the data gateway. So once we have downloaded it, I'll install it. Now this might require some IT settings and permissions, but let me try and show it to you. So while this happens, in the meantime, let me tell you that with the free version of Power BI, you can have 1 automatic refresh per day. With the Pro version, you can have 8 refreshes per day. And with the premium version, you can have 48 refreshes per day. So that's also a point of differentiation between the different versions of Power BI that you have. Excellent. So I think it has got installed. Perfect. Let me sign in as well. So I'll put in my email ID. And select the account. All right, everything seems okay. And let's see. Let me refresh the page. Let's see if the gate connection is working now. So let me refresh the history. That's okay. It still says that it is not reachable. Let's see if we can change something in the settings. So it says online, everything seems to be okay. Let me also test it. Okay, let's come back. One more time, click and then click on settings. Then we have the gateway connection and all right, I'm not really sure. Like I said, you will need some IT help for this. This is something I personally don't use, but I thought it's important for me to at least show you that this is how you set up a gateway connection in case somebody asks you. Let me just try one last time. So it says data sources include, no, this is something else. Let's leave this. And of course, once you have set up the gateway, you can also set up the scheduled refresh, not difficult to do. You can choose the daily frequency and you can choose the time as well. What that means is that the same time every day, the Power BI report on Power BI service will automatically get updated. All right. Like I said, there are many other things on the Power BI service interface. So we have alerts and subscriptions and row level security and whatnot. So please make sure to read about it. If you're working on the side of things where you're also required to set up administrator controls and tenant settings, that is not really what the course is about. We are not really looking at the IT side of it, but it's good to know at least that all of this is there. One last thing that I want to show you, so I'll just go back to my trainings workspace, is how we can set up a data flow. A data flow is nothing, it's just Power Query on the internet. So I'll click on data flow and I want to import a model. No. I want to add a new table. So it will ask me to select from different types of data sources. Let me do that. So let's try for an online service, or let's go to other and we have a web page. Perfect. And the URL I'm going to select here is moneycontrol.com, like this, moneycontrol.com. You can see that my on-premises gateway is already set up. Like I said, if you're not able to see this, then you will have to set it up. Click on next. By the way, there are many errors and many issues that will come up when you're trying to do all this. If at all something happens, just use the error type or the error code, go to Google and search for it. As you can see from Money Control, I'm able to find all the tables that are there. And if I go to table 0, it shows me a preview of the data that is on the Money Control website like this. So I'm not going to complete the example. I just want to show you that when we click on transform data, you will be able to see Power Query on the cloud. Now, there are some points of differences. Something that Power BI Online is much better at is the fact that you have this visual view. So if I click on view, you can see that I have a diagram view here like this. Very cool. This is not available at the moment in Power BI desktop. So in Power Query desktop, it is only available online, and this makes the process of cleaning and prepping data much easier. Other than that, most of the things that you would usually use is available both on desktop and online. Great. So that completes the lecture, everybody. And in the next lecture, I just want to speak to you a little bit about what should be a process of learning and what websites and content should you access on the internet. Hi, everyone. As we have come to the end of this course, remember your journey with Power BI is just beginning. Let's just see how how much ground we have covered. We have started with Power BI, business intelligence, how to download it, understanding the interface. We connected to different data sets. We created our first dashboard. We did a deep dive into our first dashboard and a chart where we saw the number of options available. Then we have done inbuilt charts. We have also done the charts that we download. Let me just change the spelling here. Then we have downloaded more visuals from the internet as well. We have seen the AI visualizations. We have seen advanced visuals. We have seen how different charts and elements can interact with each other. We saw how Power Query can help us combine multiple files, prep and clean the data. We have seen how DAX can be used to create functions and formulas in data models. And we saw Power BI service as well. So what happens next? Power BI, remember, is a journey. It is not something you can finish learning in a month. One of the reasons for that is that change happens so frequently in Power BI that every month there are major changes happening. So you have to keep pace with it. I personally have been working on Power BI since 2018 March, and it's been a wonderful journey, but it's been a journey where I have to constantly keep on learning, and that's true for all of you. Now, the first thing that I suggest is to go to help, and you will see that there is a lot of help that Microsoft has given you. I have shown you the documentation before. Then you also have some sample reports, the community gallery. You also have external tools, like I said, for this is for more advanced operations. And then you also have some guided learning and training videos. Now, obviously, the training videos that you have on the Microsoft website will not be as detailed like this course. But if you want to refresh on a specific topic, no harm in going and having a look at that. From a practical point of view, you should definitely look at the community gallery. And the reason I suggest this is just go to the data stories gallery. The reason that I suggest very strongly that you should do this is because it is very important to know what is capable in the application. So what is the capability of the application? And by looking at the sort of reports that people from around the world have created, it gives you a lot of ideas, it gives you a lot of inspiration, and it gives you a lot of direction in terms of understanding what is it that you want to create. So this is the data stories gallery, and you can see that there are hundreds of dashboards and reports available here. I would also suggest that you go to the Tableau public gallery. Tableau, everybody remember, is just a competitor to Power BI, and Tableau is more of a data visualization tool. So the data visuals and the aesthetics are much better in Tableau, no question about it. The level of customization that you have is absolutely fantastic. But then they're really slightly different in its approach. Tableau focuses a lot on creating visuals that are absolutely standouts in terms of the quality. Power BI is more focused on the analysis, modeling, all of that. But anyway, from an ideas perspective, you can always go to the Tableau public gallery and also have a look at that. I have already mentioned the two websites, but I'll mention it once again. One is SQL BI, which also has DAX guide, DAX do, DAX patterns, DAX formatter, some visuals called OKViz and Synoptic Designer. This is by far the best and the most updated website for Power BI, so you should definitely start reading it. Yes, in the beginning it might seem very advanced and very difficult, but then you have to start somewhere. Specifically for Power Query, you can go to a website called Radacat, RADSCAT, specifically for Power Query. If you like watching videos on YouTube, you can go to Kerbal on YouTube, and it is headed by Ruth. And there are, as you can see, there's a playlist called DAX Fridays. There are other tips and tricks, updates, and you can see there are a bunch of different videos and playlists here. There's so much content, you will be absolutely, I mean, completely blown away by the quality of content. There is another channel called Guy in a Cube that also you can look at. Guy in a Cube also is very frequently updated and it has a little bit of everything in it. Of course, there are many others, like SQL BI also has a channel, so you can look at that. So what happens is that when you start going to good channels, in turn, you also learn to identify other channels. For example, I came across a channel sometime back called Havens Consulting, and it's new but it's doing really well. So it has about 150 videos, but the quality of content here is absolutely fantastic. So you have to get used to this process of going online, looking at what others are doing. When you get stuck somewhere, you have to go online and figure out how it works. So this has to be a part and parcel of your learning journey. So we come to the end of this course, everyone. Um, I have updated the content, and what all of you are watching right now, or rather what you have watched just now, has been updated after a year. My first Power BI course came in May 2020. Hopefully, I will not take one more year before coming up with updates. And any new small topics here and there that I feel is important, I will keep on adding it after these lectures. So after all the lectures are complete, there would be an extra folder. And in that section, you'll be able to find all the new topics that I have spoken about. Once again, thank you for joining me on this journey. All the very best. And for any queries, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in looking at the other courses that we have, I would really appreciate it if you can go to our website at havishamconsulting.stores.instamojo.com. As of this moment, we have 29 courses available, but hopefully by the time you complete this course, we will have even more courses that have come in here. At the moment, we have courses on Power BI, Tableau. There are 16 courses on Excel, which includes everything from basic to super advanced Excel. An introductory course on 9. Then we have courses on Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, and also some introductory programming courses on Python and R. All the best, everyone. Thank you.